Okay, so thank you all for everyone who's been a part of this conference from the first day, or do I say day zero for us? That was the pre-conference. And we are now at the final day of the conference, the third Human-Animal Interactions Conference in Africa, the 2023 edition. I am Dr. Sunday Agbonika, and I'm the founder of Dogalove Human Support Initiative. And it's my pleasure to have you here with us. A few announcements before we continue in the conference for today. So first of all, please feel free to use the chat box to introduce yourself, let us know where you're joining us from. And then, like someone just suggested as well, let us know what pet ownership is, the cultural perspective of pet ownership in your country. So please feel free to use the chat box to share all of that with us. And as also, do and please remember to ensure that the name on your Zoom profile that we can see right now is the name that tallies with what we already have on our sign-up sheet that you signed up with before now, so that it's easy for us to be able to sort names when we are working on the certificates. At the same time, I want to equally share that we encourage you to use the chat box as well to share relevant links and relevant events, everything that you feel may be relevant for this, the discussions that we'll be having at the conference for today. Please feel free to use the chat box to share all of that with us as well. This is also to say that this serves as an informational and educative platform, and equally for us serves as a networking and connection platform. Our primary aim for all of this that we're doing is to see how human-animal interaction grows in Africa. So if there are people you want to connect with from the conference, please feel free to have all that connections done. You can do that privately. And if you do feel you have anyone you want to reach out to, or professionals or fields you want to, you have people you want to reach out to as well, please do share in the chat box and let us know. And then if there's someone within that field who is here, they could equally connect with you personally. This is equally to let you know that the entire conference is being recorded and it will be uploaded, and the links will be shared with everyone who has registered for the event before now. And finally, we will be having an alternate host as well, like we've done for the previous days for the conference for today. So the alternate host for today, I'll probably want to quickly share the profile for the alternate host. The alternate host is someone who is working to close the gap in literacy and empowerment of youth with disabilities in rural environments in Nigeria, begin with Benue State, where she's currently schooling, by constructing sustainable libraries using reusable plastic bottles. Equally, she's facilitating reading development in supportive environments with the assistance of service and therapy dogs. She's equally a 2023 Mandela Washington Fellow, which does mean that she's currently in the US for the Mandela Washington Fellowship. So please make welcome Praise Akobo as the alternate host. Praise, please do say a quick hello so people know the face to expect, so that if people see you, it won't be abnormal.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and we're glad to have you. Thank you very much to all the speakers.
Okay, thank you. So that's the alternate host. That's my alternate host for the event for today. So at this point, we will be moving straight into the keynote address. And the keynote speaker for today is someone who is a small animal house physician. She's responsible for Glasgow University's Inner City Charity Veterinary Clinic, during which period she became attuned to the significance of companion animals in the lives of vulnerable people. Since then, over a period spanning 40 years, and with multidisciplinary collaboration, she developed veterinary outreach programs, delivering animal-assisted intervention programs to schools, nursing homes, hospitals, shelter housing, and prisons. She has traveled widely to meet colleagues overseas to learn more of their work in human-animal interactions. She's the chairperson of Society for Companion Animal Studies, SCAS. She's the SEVA Vet of the, she was SEVA Vet of the Year in 2022, if I remember correctly, and the director of the UK charity Our Special Friends. She's a past vice president of IAHIO, and then she co-founded Canine Partners, the UK Assistance Dog Program. She's a visiting lecturer on human-animal bond to the UK veterinary schools and has lectured widely overseas. She received the International William McCulloch Award for Excellence in Human-Animal Interaction Practice and Education, and was UK Veterinarian of the Year in 2021 for her keynote address titled Veterinary Community Outreach, Applying Knowledge of the Human-Animal Bond, Animal Welfare and Behavior to help prevent, identify, and also rehabilitate violent behavior. Please make welcome my mentor. Let me add that as also someone who has given me or afforded invaluable mentorship support to myself, to my organization, to everything, even for this conference right now, Dr. Elizabeth Omrom.
Right, sorry about that. The button was in a different place from usual. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
So I'm delighted to be here today to discuss some of my findings and findings of colleagues about how we can apply the bond in the prevention, identification and rehabilitation of antisocial and violent behaviours. I'm the chair of the Society for Companion Animal Studies, SCAS, and it was established in 1979 to study human-animal interactions and to raise awareness of the importance of pets in society. And it's the leading human companion animal bond organisation in the UK. And we provide education, raise awareness, encourage best practice, influence policy, and we fund research. We're a membership organisation. We welcome members from all of the health and social care education professions, but also anyone, including pet owners, that are interested in learning more about human-animal interactions. Now, when I graduated, as Sandy said, I worked in the inner city, helping people who couldn't afford private veterinary fees. My clients were poor, they lived in areas of social deprivation with high crime, a lot of violence, often fueled by drug taking and alcoholism. My clients were often chronically disabled, chronically ill, elderly, leading very challenging lives. But I found that if they had a strong bond with their companion animal, that animal provided enormous social support and helped them to cope. A few years later, my husband Edward and I purchased a companion animal practice in a small fishing town where it was recognised by health and social care professionals that this was a town that had poorer health than the surrounding areas and worse social conditions. And when we purchased the practice, our aim was to have a bond centre practice where all the clients' relationships with their pets were observed and strengthened and supported, but also we would have extensive community outreach. So I wanted to teach humane education in the primary schools, accredit suitable animals as resident and visitors to local care facilities, of which we had many, because our town was by the seaside with lots of care homes, 2 hospitals. I wanted to introduce pet inclusive policy to sheltered housing so that older people didn't have to give up the pets when they went into supported living, and to teach the other professions about the human-animal bond. So in the 28 years that we ran the practice, I taught in lots of settings. Started off in the primary schools, and then the kindergarten teachers wanted the lessons, then the senior school teachers wanted the lessons, in the special needs school, the youth groups. Probation then asked me to work with at-risk youth. The prison governor got to know about this and invited me to work there with the lifers group. These are the men serving the longer sentences. And then eventually, some years later, I ended up as advisor on animal-assisted interventions to the Scottish Prison Service and worked in a special unit that held 7 men that were too difficult to hold in the mainstream. So these were the men in the highest secure unit in Scotland. And I'll explain later about some of the findings that I have from that unit as well. So being a veterinarian, my humane education curriculum embraced these topics. And humane education, it's just a wonderful topic. It cuts across all topics. It's very interesting for the children. They really want to learn about animals. And if we teach it in a comparative way, we can teach comparative preventive medicine. So we can teach children about vaccination for pets, farm animals, zoo animals, and for people. We can talk about nutrition across the species, including for people. Parasites, very interesting subject. Not so scary if you're talking about parasites in animals, but then we can talk about things like head lice. And the children, they're just fascinated by this. We can talk about personal hygiene and dental care, subjects that might be quite tricky, but we can demonstrate on animals and the importance of keeping clean and healthy. We can talk about birth control, weight management, exercise. We can talk about things to avoid. Animals don't do drugs, alcohol, and tobacco. We don't need to either. And how to safely interact with animals is really important, especially for children that are brought up in households where there are no companion animals. Some schools resist humane education. They say, oh, the curriculum's too crowded, or maybe the head teacher just doesn't like animals and doesn't think it's worthy to teach animal welfare. But in these situations, offer your first lesson how to safely interact with stray animals. And they'll probably be very keen to have you come in. Once you've done that lesson, you can then usually go back and do the other lessons. There's been some research about the effect of boys being bonded to a dog. Some European studies found that boys bonded to a dog, especially if bonded over a period of time, less likely to be in a gang culture, or to commit crime, or to be involved with drugs, or taking excess alcohol. And in contrast, they have greater respect for the parents, more traditional values, and higher academic achievement. So this is the sort of information that I would share with pet owners in the practice, and also when I was doing talks in the community. I went out to all of the other professions and to talk them about human-animal bond and how that applied to their work. And the professions were interested, and lots of them worked with me on projects. And what I had done was, without realising it, was creating a multidisciplinary community network with colleagues from health, social care, education, the police force, all the professions. And if I then was in a position of worrying about a client and say their mental health or their behaviour, or concerned about child or animal welfare, my support was just a phone call away. I knew who to call, and they would then give me wonderful advice over the phone. And I didn't usually have to disclose who the person was. And so client confidentiality wasn't really a problem. However, the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons in Britain has amended our confidentiality clause. So we can now cross-report if we have real concerns. And that's something that all countries should do. In fact, in the USA, it's mandated when there's a case of child welfare. Some of the states mandate that vets must report. Taking you now to Green Chimneys in New York State in America. I've been there several times. It's a wonderful place. And Dr. Sam Ross, the founder, who has now sadly deceased, he said to me that all children should have the opportunity of the companionship of a pet, a very important part of their life cycle. And this is something that I very strongly believe. And I encourage my clients and people in our town to ensure that the children had enriched experiences with companion animals. If they didn't have companion animals in their own home, then they should seek other animals to bond with, grandparents, relatives, neighbours, pets. Green Chimneys is a residential school for troubled children and was founded over 70 years ago. And they found that developing a bond with an animal is key to the child's recovery. Each child is given an animal to care for and an older mentor child to help them, as well as a staff member. They have internships, so if anybody's interested in learning more about this, apply to go as an intern. And they run excellent annual conferences, and if you get an opportunity, you should go. Again, in North America, this is the late Professor Leo Bousted, a father figure of our field of anthrozoology. He was the Dean of the Washington State Veterinary College. And about the same time that I started my community outreach, he started his from the vet school. His initially was about teaching humane education in local primary schools, introducing pets, suitable pets into the nursing homes. And then he got involved starting a very important prison program. And that was at the Women's Prison in Tacoma, Washington State, the first to introduce unwanted dogs to prison for training, rehabilitation and adoption. This was started in the early 1980s and continues to this day and is extremely successful. It has spawned other programs throughout North America and other countries across the world. Unwanted dogs are reformed and rehomed. The prisoners learn vocational skills. I've been to visit this program, and the prisoners said that they recognise the similarity of the dog with behaviour issues ending up in the animal shelter and them ending up in prison because of their behaviour issues. And they said, if a dog can change, so can I. Now, this is a very remarkable lady. This is Sister Pauline, a Dominican nun. And as a child of 13, she was institutionalized from then and went on to be incarcerated in Tacoma Women's Prison. When she left Tacoma for what turned out to be the last time, the local police force gifted her a dog. And she told me that as she trained the dog, she recognized a huge shift in herself. Her attitude and her behavior changed. And what's really impressive is that she went to Professor Leo Bousted and shared this with him and persuaded him to go to the governor of Tacoma Prison to suggest that dogs from the shelter could go into the prison and be looked after by the prisoners who could train them, because she thought that the women in prison could also benefit in the same way. The meeting took place and the governor agreed, and the women's dog training program was started. Absolutely incredible. There's actually a film about Sister Pauline and her work. Again, in North America, this is another of my mentors, Dr. Earl Strimple, a companion animal veterinary surgeon in Washington, DC. He introduced a program called People, Animals, Love, PAL. The PAL program introduced accredited animals into local nursing homes. And then he extended a program to Lorton Prison, a prison for adult male offenders. A wide number of species were kept, a wide range, cats, caged birds, fish, and an extensive animal care program was introduced. He actually introduced the training for people to graduate as an animal technician. And when these men left prison, they found jobs in local veterinary practices and in hospitals. When I visited, men from different religious sects explained that the presence of the animals had helped them to overcome their differences. So previously they had avoided each other, they wouldn't look at each other, they wouldn't talk to each other, but because of the animals, they made deep and lasting friendships. And very interestingly, after Earl had been working with the prisoners for some time, they requested that he deliver humane education to their children, because they are aware that children of offenders are more likely to end up in trouble and to be incarcerated as adults. So Earl then, at their request, introduced humane education for their children. Again, in North America, this is Project Pooch at McLaren School for Young Offenders in Oregon. And this is a much studied program. Recorded benefits include improvements in respect for authority, improvements in relationships and leadership, growth in honesty and empathy, nurturing, pride of achievement, understanding and confidence, and very significantly, reduction in recidivism. Where it's been measured in these programs, recidivism rates are lower. So people that get the benefit of these programs while they're in prison are less likely to reoffend. That's good for them, it's good for society. It's also good for fiscal savings because it costs a phenomenal amount of money to keep people in prison. Gone over to Italy now, and this is a program called San Patrignano that specialises in rehabilitating people addicted to drugs and or alcohol. Founded over 40 years ago, some of the people are referred from the prison service. The ethos here is to embrace life, and activities include horticulture, a wide range of plants, their own food is grown. They have animal-assisted intervention programs, and these dog handler teams are ones that visit nursing homes. Now, for people that work in drug rehab, you'd be surprised to know the success rate, the long-term success rate of the people graduating from this program is 72%. 72%. San Patrignano welcomes people to go there to learn, and they run conferences. And they also provide treatment free for people who want to be rehabilitated. They can apply to go there free of charge. My work in prisons has involved me doing national surveys and I've visited over 20 establishments throughout the UK and several prisons in North America and in Europe. Wherever animals have been introduced, the staff wax lyrical and the prisoners about the benefits. And these are just some of the responses from staff in English prisons. They talk about relationships and therapeutic benefits. And especially prisons are concerned about people who self-harm. And we find that having animals really helps people's mental health, helps people to cope. I said before that I ended up working in the Scottish Prison Service and was attached to the special unit at HMP Shotts for a number of years. This is a very specialised unit holding men, usually 7 men at a time, looked after by 28 prison officers and 2 prison governors. These are serious offenders with volatile and violent behaviour who cannot be maintained in normal jails. And I worked with them for about 7 years. This little cat here was the one that started the programme. This man he kept in solitary confinement for a number of years and his mental health deteriorated significantly. He was on the point of being transferred to the state asylum for criminal offenders. And he found this little kitten. And he shared that this wee cat saved my sanity. The first thing I showed affection to in 7 years. If you've lost concern for other people, and you get a pet to care for, that's where caring begins in a place like this. And that centre, that shots unit, went on to admit a number of animals, cage birds. They had an extensive aquarium programme, rabbits and guinea pigs, some hamsters, gerbils, pigeons. And the animals in different ways really made a difference. And these are some of the comments from the prisoners and from one of the governors. Another of the governors shared that in his opinion, the animal that had made the biggest difference was a little rabbit that I'd introduced. Lucky had been brought to the surgery for euthanasia because her mum was moving home and couldn't find accommodation where she could take her rabbit. So reluctantly, she asked for euthanasia. Edward and I would never euthanize animals unless it was in the animal's best interest. We would rehome them. So I asked, would she like me to rehome the little rabbit? And I knew a very good home in a prison setting where I could guarantee the animal would be well taken care of. So she agreed, and Lucky came up to Shotts Prison with me, and she made a huge difference. This is a therapeutic community that had weekly meetings every Tuesday, and everybody dreaded the weekly meeting because the staff and the prisoners had to agree on various issues, but they never could agree. People got really angry, so angry that they couldn't have visitors on a Tuesday. The fallout continued through the week, and people were just recovering. And then it was the next Tuesday. But little Lucky the rabbit, who became a house rabbit, she attended the meetings, and she hopped from person to person, got a little stroke, little pat, went to the next person. And from the start of Lucky attending the meetings, nobody fell out. Everybody was calm and quiet and reached consensus because nobody wanted to upset Lucky the rabbit. The governor said it was amazing. So these are some of the observations that the staff and I made at the Shotts Special Unit. Wherever we introduce suitable animals into facilities, whatever kind of facilities, human relationships improve. People are happier. There's less anxiety, there's less aggression. People behave better. People view each other more positively. Especially in a prison system or in a nursing home, the spontaneous behaviour of animals makes people laugh, makes people happy. And animals in such settings, they provide legitimate contact for tactile interaction. In a prison, people, and in nursing homes, people get skin hunger. They want to be touched, but nobody wants to really touch them. Can be viewed, especially in a prison, can be viewed very inappropriate. But when the animals are there, people can touch the animals, but they'll also touch the person that's holding the animal. And the staff in Shotts Prison found that absolutely amazing. People are very interested in animals and their care, and that can be a surprise to people that prisoners would want to learn about animals and their care, but they do. And the standards of care that I've seen given to animals in prison is generally higher than I have seen in the community. And in learning about preventive medicine and about behaviour of people and animals, comparative, we can introduce important concepts without being patronising. Just going back to North America now. So the Oakwood Forensic Centre, a criminal asylum, introduced animals in 1975 as an adjunct to therapy. And there was a year-long study of 2 matched wards, one with pets, one without. The ward with the pets had a 50% reduction in psychotropic medication, a drastic reduction in violence, and no suicide attempts, whereas there were 8 attempts in that year in the other ward. And where there was a major violent incident in the ward with the pets, the men linked arms and formed a barrier around the pets to keep them safe. Everything else got smashed up, but the pets didn't get harmed. And following seeing the benefits of the animals were introduced across and throughout the facility. I just want to say that the human-animal bond is important and a powerful facet of One Health, but is largely untapped and could be harnessed to address many society's pressing problems. Where it's happening, it tends to be in an ad hoc fashion. So people like me and Sunday and Earl Strimple and Leslie, who you're going to hear about, we're doing our projects in our communities to great benefit. But we need to apply this for every animal and person that needs help. We could dramatically change society, create a much more aware and caring society with enhanced health and encourage environment protection. But we need legislation to expedite its proper implementation. And if you go to the IAHIO website, you can access the resolutions pertaining to the human-animal bond. And these are recommendations for local and national government to understand and enact. Now, the veterinary profession, our main responsibility really is to public health. And traditionally, that's involved applying our knowledge to prevent zoonotic transfer, research in the development of safe pharmaceuticals for people and animals, and about food production and safety, keeping us all healthy. But with our understanding, our growing understanding of the human-companion-animal bond, there are new roles for veterinarians in society, and these include health promotion for individuals and families, involvement in AAI and AAT programs, that's animal assisted interventions or services, including offender rehabilitation, humane education, and the detection and reporting of non-accidental injury, the links that you heard from Phil Arco. Regarding humane education, that's a big task, an especially big task. And I think the best way to accomplish this is something also that Phil Arco recommended to me in the 1980s during my Churchill Fellowship, and that was we should teach the teachers. So instead of individuals like me teaching humane education, I think we should be teaching the teachers at Teacher Training College. Humane education has cross-curricular links, can be taught right across the spectrum of teaching in every subject. And to facilitate this also, every school should have 1 or 2 teachers responsible for humane education so that they can then help with the other teachers and the other subjects. So what's needed now? Well, we need training for all health social care professions and educators about the human-animal bond. Programs involving animals need extremely careful planning, and they need a multidisciplinary approach with veterinary involvement. And I've put some resources at the end in a slide. We need the regulated presence of visiting and resident animals in care facilities. So we don't want the ad hoc, I'll bring my dog in. They need to be assessed and accredited by veterinarians and, where necessary, by species behaviourists. We need humane education in our schools and in our prisons. And how can we expedite this? And have a suggestion. I think that we should have public health veterinarians specialising in the human-animal bond appointed to each region. And they could deliver training in AAI, in humane education, and about the health benefits accruing from pets, and about the links, the interconnectedness of violence. They can deliver that training to all the professions and help create multidisciplinary community teams. I just want to leave you with a couple of slides, a couple of quotes. Albert Schweitzer said, until he extends the circle of compassion to all living things, man himself will not find peace. And especially for the veterinarians present, this is a quote from Claude Bourgelat, a French lawyer and equestrian specialist who founded the veterinary schools in France. These were the first establishments using scientific information to inform veterinary medicine. And he said, physicians treat humans, whereas veterinarians treat humanity. And I've taken that to mean that with our training, our responsibility is not just to our patients, but to their families and to the wider community, to the wild animals they're in, and to the environment that we all share. So that is a humane ethic. I've just put in a slide about my background there. And these are some resources to give a better understanding of human-animal interactions and how it's applied to facilities and communities. I'm happy for any of you to reach out to me and to SCAS. And I say SCAS welcomes membership, applications, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liz. It was really amazing going through and listening to all you just said. I was really amazed at the prison reforms and everything that has actually happened there because of what you're doing. Okay, our time is actually a bit up, but we would love you to just quickly respond to this question Barbara asked, if you can just quickly give huge context to it. So she was trying to say that that it's okay. She said it's so amazing how animals can look at those who are actually lost, but she wanted to just ask about the welfare of animals in these programs, especially in prisons. So she said, are people monitored all the time when interacting with animals? Or are there any incidences of animal abuse there? And if so, what is the percentage of those? She now added something else. Do you have any specific criteria who can participate in such programs? And if you do, who are they and what should they be doing?
Right, there's a lot in that question. So I have found over my years in prison that animals in prisons are generally better taken care of than they are by my clients in my vet practice, because people are totally invested in that relationship. I'll give you an example. So I met a man serving over 30 years in a Scottish prison, and he had a little bird, a little budgerigar. And he told me that when she took ill, he sat up for 72 hours without sleep, feeding her with a little dropper bottle. And she made a full recovery. Now, in my veterinary practice, in my 40 years in veterinary practice, I never had anybody that demonstrated such commitment to the little pet. I have come across very few incidences of cruelty in animals in prison. One that stands out is in a young offender institution, a man put a bar of soap into a fish tank. He just did it for a joke, but he killed some fish. And after that, the fish tank then had a lockable lid. So the only person that could open the fish tank was the person going to feed the fish. We had a report of a man when I ran another program at a high secure prison in England, and we had a report of a man who wasn't properly taking care of his cage bird. So the other prisoners took the cage bird from him, and they decided who would be a suitable new owner for the little bird. As I say, it's very rare for animals in prison to be abused, which is interesting because a lot of people who abuse other people abuse animals. So some of the people who are taking good care of animals in prison probably didn't take good care while they were in the community. But once they're in prison, that animal means everything to them because people in prison don't have proper friends, and it's very difficult for them to maintain relationships with their family. So the animal becomes very often their most significant other. About who gets an animal to care for, that depends on the prison regime. So in Earl Stimple's programme at Lorton Prison, it was prisoners would recommend other prisoners as being responsible. In a South African prison, it's where the prison officers decide that an individual is responsible. It's just very variable. The prison at HMP Shotts where I worked, anybody who wanted could have a companion animal. And I would then explain to them how to care for the animal. And in that situation, there was close supervision because with 7 prisoners and 28 prison officers and 2 governors.
Mhm.
But the pets could be in the cells overnight with the men. And we didn't have any incidents of abuse at all.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much. Because of time, we'll just move on to the next speaker. But thank you so much for that response to the question. And I believe that Barbara must have understood from your response. And hopefully, if she has something else she really needs clarity on, or any other person, they'll definitely reach out to you. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so thank you everyone. We'll be moving quickly to the next speaker, and I'll run through her bio. Okay, so the speaker is someone who is really doing something grassroots, and though after she has actually studied legal studies and legal accounting as well, and working in that particular field for about 15 years, she left to pursue her passion for animal welfare and addressing the links between animal abuse, child abuse, and domestic abuse. So over 35 years experience in working in the voluntary sector as both a professional and in the volunteer capacity. She has been able to set up 2 charities in relation to animal welfare and child welfare. So driven by this desire to develop a unique women education project for vulnerable children, it has actually led to the creation of Fostering Compassion, which has a great link to our team today, bringing together abused and neglected children with rescued animals. And she has actually had varying education background, ranging from her diploma in legal studies, just like already mentioned, and down to where she had her studies in the Edinburgh University in clinical psychology. And she has also had a research master's and PhD. She's currently research by master's and PhD students from Edinburgh University on the same work of fostering compassion. Most importantly, she is an award-winning women education charity, Fostering Compassion, which addresses the links between animal abuse, child abuse, and interpersonal violence, and works to reverse the cycle of abuse often existing in these circumstances. So she works with, and of course her team works with the children who may be showing worrying behavior towards animals, lacking compassion and empathy in circumstances, allowing them to see animals as sentient beings with similar emotions to them. This has often provided a platform for the children to open up about their own neglects and also helping turn worrying behaviors towards animals into nurturing and compassionate behavior. And lastly, it has actually helped stop animal cruelty before it happens. There's still other things in her bio, but we sent the documents to every participant, so it's something you can also really check through. So we are so glad to welcome someone amazing. She'll be talking about sharing the stories of rescued animals with care, experienced children to foster compassion and help reverse the cycle of abuse. Let's make welcome Leslie Winton. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for that. It's a real pleasure to be asked to speak to this wonderful conference today from Scotland. So thank you very much for having me. I just want to make sure this is working. Okay, has that slide changed for everyone?
Yeah, it has.
So Fostering Compassion is a groundbreaking humane education project, unique in its approach to addressing the links between animal abuse, child abuse, and interpersonal violence. Our animal and nature themed activities are specially designed to help children see animals as sentient beings who can share similar emotions and feelings as they do, helping to turn any worrying behaviour towards animals, very often as a result of the child's own abuse, into nurturing and compassionate behaviour, therefore helping play a part in reversing the cycle of abuse. So the link, which obviously we heard about from Phil yesterday, the link which is the recognised connection between domestic abuse, animal abuse, child maltreatment and elder abuse, very strongly underpins everything we do at Fostering Compassion, along with the human-animal bond. So by sharing the stories of rescued animals with the children, they gain a greater understanding of their own circumstances and the animal stories, which often provide a platform for the children to open up about their own abuse and neglect. Fostering Compassion began in 2013 with just 10 children, and now over 1,000 children have been through the programme. So very often where animal abuse exists, child abuse exists, and vice versa. So children subjected to abuse and neglect often struggle to show compassion towards animals and others, and may take their frustrations out on animals, mirroring behaviour at home as a pecking order develops. The presence of animal maltreatment in a home may indicate callousness, neglect, or abuse of children in that environment, and vice versa. Children may mimic or learn callous and abusive behaviours towards animals from abusive adults. Individuals that harm animals often have patterns of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse towards humans. Research points out that the way adolescents care for pets may transfer to the way they will care for their children as adults. Sexually abused children were found to be 5 times more likely to abuse animals than were children who were not sexually abused. And a child who abuses an animal is more likely to go on to show violence towards humans and be led into a life of crime. So where domestic abuse and coercive control exist, the strength of the human-animal bond is often exploited in these situations as the perpetrator threatens to inflict cruelty on the family pet as a way to manipulate, threaten, intimidate, and emotionally harm their human victims. A child may be forced to inflict cruelty on an animal, or the perpetrator says they will inflict worse harm. Children witnessing acts of violence and cruelty towards animals often suffer emotional and psychological trauma. Children exposed to domestic violence are nearly 3 times more likely to exhibit cruelty towards animals than children who had no prior history of witnessing domestic abuse. In homes where domestic violence is present, between 25 and 75% of animals have either been abused or threatened with abuse. If you have a child who is intentionally and repeatedly displaying aggression towards animals at a younger age, for whatever reason, it is a red flag and a warning sign. So children referred to fostering compassion to date have received a number of positive outcomes, including improved feelings of self-worth, self-confidence, and self-esteem, increased compassion of empathy, a sense of empowerment, a better understanding of their personal circumstances, and developing an understanding of how a loving and caring environment can help them thrive. They learn how awareness of their own actions can affect others. They learn about health and well-being, and they go home with coping tools and techniques for carers and the children to continue at home. So our workshops and activities are attended by the children and caregivers as a family unit. So this may be children in foster care or kinship care or adopted children. They provide an opportunity to bring separated siblings together on neutral ground, and they provide a safe place where children and caregivers can come together, have fun, achieve a sense of identity, feel less isolated, and find friends and a valuable network of support. Our workshops include the stories of domestic animals, farm animals, working animals, and wild animals. I promise we don't have a hamster that's bigger than a Shetland pony, but the pictures are not quite to scale. So our workshops and activities, we currently have a bank of 14 workshops. Children are referred for a series of 3 workshops, which normally consist of 2 indoor workshops and 1 day out. Each workshop has an educational element themed around a particular rescued animal, told in a way that helps the children draw parallels with their own circumstances. Our indoor workshops have craft activities that can be continued at home to build on positive behavioural changes taking place during the workshops and build on positive mental well-being. These activities include things like our memory jar, our calm down jar, our gratitude tree, emotions tree, wishing tree, and our random acts of kindness. And each workshop includes a gift of compassion for the children to give to an animal in need. This may be something they take with them or something they make. So it may be honey for the bears to help the bears take their medicine, apples for the carrots and the donkeys to keep their teeth clean, 2 boxes of treats and toys for dogs in shelters, or great big boxes of comfort for senior dogs going to new homes. Or they may be our animal oxygen resuscitation masks that we donate to the Scottish Fire Service for use on any animals rescued from fires who have been overcome by smoke. So 2 of our favourite workshops are our holidays and Mr. T's Tickles workshops. And during holidays, the children learn about rescue dog Holly, who wasn't looked after properly in her early years and had a number of different homes. They learn how she eventually found a new home and a happy home where she was loved, nurtured and cared for and consequently thrived. The children learned how Holly had a very favourite neighbour on her walk, and this neighbour would always give Holly a biscuit. So Holly got so used to this, she used to stand on the grass outside the neighbour's house, stare in the window and bark till the neighbour came out to give her a biscuit. We tell the children how Holly always wanted 3 biscuits, but how she only ever got 2 to keep her healthy and well. And by this, the children learn that sometimes not getting everything you want is a sign of love too. Through Mr. T's Tickles workshop, the children learn about dear old dog Mr. T, who was a puppy in a pensioner's body. They learn how you can tell he's an older dog, what the needs might be of an older dog, what might comfort an older dog going to a new home, and how hard it can be for older dogs to get homes, which again is very often the case with older children. Within our workshops, we work with therapy animals, bringing them together with the children. We have therapy dogs and therapy ponies that come into our workshops. And then when we have activities that involve wild animals, we do our work through education and observation. We feel incredibly strongly about the importance of terminology, and we never use the word use. We will never say we use animals. We will always say we work with animals. And as soon as the animals arrive, they're introduced to the children as equals, as very special members of the team. And it's our duty to look after them and make sure all their needs are met. So the gifts of compassion in each workshop can vary. They can be the goodie boxes or the things I mentioned earlier. And one of my favorite ones is the big box of comfort, which is the middle picture here, which the children make up during Mr. T's Tickles workshop. And this is a box that is packed full of things for an older dog going to a new home. So as well as putting in things like a bowl, some toys, a blanket, etc., we ask the children what else we think an older doggy might need. So we'll say things again that will draw parallels with their own circumstances. So we'll say things like, do you think the doggy needs to brush his hair and brush his teeth like we do? So we put in a brush and we put in doggy toothbrush and toothpaste. Many of the children will write a letter to the doggy saying, don't forget to brush your teeth. We'll also say things like, do you think the doggy might be anxious going to a new home? So we put in anxiety spray. We then say, do you think the doggy might wet the bed? Again, something that may happen to the children. So we put in doggy pee pads. And we'll then say, do you think the doggy might have bad dreams? Again, very often the children we work with have sleep deprivation and suffer a lot of nightmares. So we put in a doggy dream catcher to make sure the dog has only good dreams, and we gift a dream catcher to all the children. Then each child writes a letter that goes in the box to the dog, and very often in these letters, they may disclose something they've never spoken about before. So the top letter says, Dear Doggy, I am writing this note to say I hope you get a home soon and stay well. I am a child whose gran died and I am living with my auntie. And it was a very scary experience in a new home. But I hope you get a home and you're loved and cared for. Now that little child had never expressed that to his auntie. That was the first time he expressed it when he wrote the letter. The bottom right-hand corner letter says, Dear Doggy, things will get better soon. You will have lots of treats and cuddles. Somebody will play with you lots and lots. Hope you like the box I made. I hope you get the best loving home very soon. And sometimes the dogs write back, which the children absolutely love. So this was dear old Midget who got one of the children's boxes of comfort and all their letters. And Midget wrote back, and this is what Midget said. I had a very exciting morning when I was visited by a couple of ladies and was told the big box they had was all for me from you. There are letters to me as well, and Mummy said she will read them to me when I've calmed down. I was so excited. I was twirling round and barking. I thought I'd never stop, and neither did Mummy. In the dog pound where I was taken when I had no home, I was sad and scared, but now I have a home. I'm very happy, and to get your letters and presents has made me very, very, very happy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you like the photos. And down at the bottom, it said it was meant to be my paw print, but I wanted to lick my foot instead. So the children were delighted to get the letter from Midget. We also have additional craft activities. The children do memory jars where they just write on a little bit of paper, something that evokes a happy memory. Could be anything from scoring a goal at football to their favorite flavor of ice cream. And the idea behind this is if they ever get sad, they can open up their jar and be reminded of something that creates a happy memory. We have our forget-me-not tree. Sometimes the children, even though they've been removed from their birth parents, they still miss them. So this gives them the opportunity to write a little message on a wooden heart or star. We have our emotions tree where the children can write how they feel after the activity. And we also have our gratitude tree where the children write something that they are grateful for and hang it on the tree. There's a lot of research done now on the positives of focusing on things that we're grateful for rather than things we don't have, and that can reduce toxic emotions, reduce depression, enhance empathy, reduce aggression, and improve sleep. All very good for the children we work for. There was one activity I was doing, and I was aware of a foster mum being a little bit moved. She was in the corner. I said, "Are you okay?" And it turned out she had just taken in a new child. He was only about 8. The placement had been going for about 6 weeks. It wasn't going well. It was about to break down. And she said, "Look at what he's written on the gratitude tree." And the little boy had written he was grateful for living in a nice house. Something, again, that he'd never expressed. So very often these activities provide a bridge of communication between child and caregiver. At the end of every activity, each child receives a goodie bag themed around the animal they've been learning about, and they also get a certificate at the end of the workshop. So they're collecting mementos throughout their time with us. We did work with an organisation called Chernobyl Children's Lifeline Trust, who used to bring children over to the UK from Belarus and Ukraine. These were children that were still suffering health problems following the Chernobyl nuclear disaster over 30 years ago. And we brought them over and we held workshops. We managed 2 years worth. We did storytelling and reading with dogs, and then we took them to see the bears. Unfortunately, these visits stopped when the pandemic hit, and then after the war in Ukraine started, they've never restarted, which is very sad. But they were wonderful workshops that we managed with an interpreter. And at the end, the children gave us a big thumbs up, which needed no interpretation. One of our newest and most exciting workshops is our Animal Heroes workshop. Through this workshop, children learn about animals who save people and people who save animals. There's a concept known as the McDonald Triad, which lists 3 behaviours. And if all 3 or a combination of 2 exist, this can be indicative of potential worrying behaviour in the future. These are bedwetting, animal cruelty, and arson or fire setting. So it was always in our plans that at some point we would team up with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service to deliver this workshop. So we've done this now, and it's a very successful workshop, and the gift of compassion from this workshop are the Smoky Paws animal oxygen masks. It's a kit of 3 different sized oxygen masks. We donate them to fire stations throughout Scotland, and they can be used on a multitude of different animals to resuscitate them if they have been overcome by fire. We began in 2020 with a target to raise enough for 10 kits. We've managed to raise enough for 23, and now all fire stations in Scotland have a kit. Now, during the Animal Heroes workshop, we share a fun little video with the children. This is the story of Millie, the little Jack Russell who got stuck on some mud flats, and the rescuers could not work out how to get her. So they came up with the ingenious idea of dangling a sausage from a drone and dangling it above Millie to see if they could entice her off the mud flats. So I'll show you this little video and hopefully it will work.
Sorry, hi, Leslie. I think the video, we can't get the audio from the video.
Oh, can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, that's fine. Don't worry about the audio.
Okay, all right.
So a nice little happy ending for Millie being enticed by a sausage, quite an ingenious idea. So at the end of that workshop, we get all the children to draw a picture of their favorite animal hero, and inevitably it's usually Millie and the sausage. So as well as the Animal Heroes workshop activities, we include in that workshop our wishing tree, where the children write on a label what they wish for. This could be something for themselves, something for somebody else, or something for the world. And in this activity, it became clear how affected children had been by the pandemic and by the war in Ukraine, because many of them said they hoped there would be no more COVID, and they wished for world peace. So very moving. One of these labels says they wish for no more greed in the world. Another says, I wish for my mum back. Very poignant. And I think my personal favorite at the bottom, I wish I had a magic unicorn. We have another workshop called Horsing Around, Why the Long Face, where the children learn all about the needs of horses and ponies, and we're joined by the miniature Shetland ponies. We have Be a Vet for the Day, another very popular workshop where the children, we team up with the local vet school, and the children get access to the clinical skills lab. They get to dress up in scrubs and look at X-ray machines, learn how to set up a kennel, learn how to suture, and of course they bring along their own teddies and learn how to bandage teddies. A very popular activity, although I think this dog on the right is never going to hear or eat ever again, but he's certainly very well bandaged. Again, as mentioned yesterday by Phil, there is a fourth element to the link, not quite so well known, elder abuse. Often elderly people can become vulnerable to abusive situations, and especially if an animal may be involved, they may be forced to part with them. So we have brought in a programme especially for senior citizens who have lost a companion animal or been separated from them. And we bring them together with Billy the dementia dog, and Billy loves to play doggy bingo and doggy pass the parcel. We work very closely with Stirling and Edinburgh universities, and they provide students doing their dissertations on fostering compassion to ensure robust evaluation to make sure we are delivering as strong an evidence-based project as we can. And Professor Joe Williams shared with us that initial results from the Fostering Compassion study, which used pre and post-test evaluation design, are very promising. Children who participated in Fostering Compassion workshops showed significant improvements in their belief in animal minds, animal welfare knowledge, attachment to animals, and attitudes towards cruelty. These findings indicate that the workshops improve children's orientations towards animals and are likely to reduce the likelihood of these children being cruel to animals in the future. Our workshops also showed the results of greater awareness and understanding of an animal's body language and improvements in emotion recognition, which is all fantastic. So at the end of every workshop, we collect feedback from the carers and the children. We always act on the feedback. If there's anything we can do differently or change or omit or add, we will do that, so we continue to produce as good a project for service users as possible. As with many organisations, we had to adapt because of the pandemic. And everything went on hold, all the workshops went on hold. So we wanted to try and come up with something that would enable us to continue to support the vulnerable children and families that we work with. So we looked at things that we thought may have arisen, issues we thought may have arisen because of the pandemic or been exacerbated by it. So we created 4 support sessions that could be delivered online or in person, on a one-to-one basis with the child. And again, all animal themed. Again, they all include activities to promote positive well-being. And the sessions are called Coping with Change, Working with Worry, Fostering Resilience, and Moving on from Mistakes. So in these activities, we do include a number of activities. We include an emotions fan and a worry box. And we do resilience bracelets. The top left-hand corner picture shows you some of the positive affirmation quotes that we put together for the children to turn into either resilience bracelets or bookmarks. And on one of them, it actually says, "I am positive." And then during one support session with a little boy who was only about 5, we showed him his little "I am positive" bracelet. And he suddenly said, I'm not positive, I'm negative. And it was so sad because that was his understanding of the pandemic, so that the word positive now had negative connotations. So I think we really need to be mindful while we are working with children of the impact of the last few years on them, even the youngest. So again, more feedback from the activities. So again, the support sessions, all animal themed again, so the children may learn the story about little Hazel, the little bear cub, worrying about keeping her tummy full for hibernation, and the story of silly Oscar, who was moving on from the mistake of lying on a chalk rainbow while having a nap, and he got covered with chalk. So through fostering compassion, we focus on bringing children and animals together. We follow the Society for Companion Animals Code of Practice. We have an animal welfare policy as well as a child welfare policy. The welfare of the animals is of paramount importance to us. And we also follow the guidance of IAHIO. We were awarded the Welfare Education Project of the Year, and we've been described as a centre of excellence. So I do hope we're doing something right. I'd like to close, if I may, with a couple of case studies of children that have been into our programme. I've obviously changed the names to protect the identities. So the first is a story of a little boy called Oscar. Oscar was referred to our programme when he was around 9 years old and was in long-term foster care with his sister. Oscar was talking like a toddler when he was placed in foster care and had never used cutlery. He'd done no speech therapy and didn't have friends, as only his sister could understand what he was saying. He had nightmares of people breaking in and stealing him away. He used to check the door was locked and the chain on before he went to bed, so the bad people wouldn't get in. He wet the bed and he didn't trust anyone. His foster mum had to learn to cut his hair, as he was terrified of hairdressers, as he thought they would cut him. Oscar had no expectation of anything good. He was always geared for disappointment. He had many scars and no memory of how he got them. His back was especially bad. When with their birth mum, Oscar and his sister used to get bought kittens. The mother would wait until they were attached to the animal and then give it away. This happened on a number of occasions, and the children eventually stopped naming the animals and developed a worrying indifference towards them. There was a little cat living with their new foster family, and it took them months to realize she was staying. Oscar was very withdrawn when he first attended our activities, and Holidays was the first workshop he came to. As mentioned earlier, during Holidays, they learned the story of Holly, the rescued Labrador, who'd suffered neglect and ill treatment and lived in 4 or 5 homes before finding her forever home, which was actually with me, and she was loved and thrived. Oscar became very taken by Holly's story. He learned how Holly's favourite place was getting up on the couch beside me to cuddle in. Over time, Oscar learned how Holly began to struggle with arthritis as she was getting older, but was still determined to get up onto her beloved's favourite spot on the couch beside me. Oscar was really moved when he became aware of Holly's plight. And one weekend, his foster mum noticed he was engrossed in building something with his Lego. Then, after studiously building a little set of Lego steps, the child handed them to his foster mum and said, "They're for Holly, to help her up on the couch." Sadly, Holly passed away a few years later, but Oscar was still involved in our fostering compassion activities. One day we were attending our Be a Vet for the Day workshop, and he spotted Holly's nose prints on the car window that I hadn't had the heart to wash off yet. He gently placed his cheek up against the window and said, "I'm hugging Holly." Also, shortly after her death, the book I'd written about Holly was featured in the local paper. Oscar's foster mum got this paper, and he spotted the article and ran up to the window and pressed the paper up against the window pane. His foster mum asked him what he was doing, and Oscar proclaimed, "I'm showing Holly the paper in heaven." Oscar and his sister drew lovely pictures of Holly by a rainbow with animal angels to help her. The photo said, "Good luck, Holly," and were full of colour, when previously the children had always drawn dark and gloomy pictures. All the more remarkable since the children had never met Holly. The second case study is that of a little boy called Craig. Craig had come from a home with extreme domestic violence, suffering severe neglect and emotional abuse. There was a placental abruption during pregnancy, and he was back in hospital within a month of being born with breathing difficulties. So there is a possibility he suffered a bleed on the brain, making life even harder for this little boy. I have to confess, and I feel quite guilty saying this, but I found him to be one of the most challenging children we've ever had when he attended our first workshop. I now have a huge place in my heart for him. In the care of his loving adoptive parents, his progress has been remarkable, and the compassion and insight this little boy now shows is incredible, considering he suffered such neglect and has had so many battles. He began attending our workshops in 2018, and I may well make myself cry this time when I tell you this story. But during one of our visits to the Five Sisters Zoo for our Meet the Bears workshop, Craig was particularly moved by the story of two newly rescued bears, Henk and Esso, brother and sister, who were only around 4 years old when they were rescued from a barren cage outside a restaurant in Albania as part of the tourist trade. Craig learned how the bears were never fed, were given beer to subdue them, and the only water they had to drink was rainwater gathering in puddles in the cage. Although he was 6, Craig couldn't read at that point and had to have the bear's story explained to him. While looking at the before and after pictures of Henk and Esso, Craig went very quiet and asked if he could stay behind with the keepers and the bears. Then came spilling out all about how the bear's story was just like his, how his mum, who he had never spoken about to strangers before, had never fed him either, and that, like the bears, he'd never had a safe place. It's even thought that Craig was over-medicated on Calpol to subdue him. Then, heartbreakingly, he asked the keepers if the bears got hit when they were naughty, clearly relating his story to that of the bears, developing a deep compassion and empathy for the animals through shared experience. We have stayed in touch with Craig and his mum, and recently they came into our office for some one-to-one work. During that time, Craig made up a special goodie box of treats and toys for a doggy at a shelter looking for his forever home. He took great care making up the box and then firmly announced that it had to go to a dog that needed it not just a dog that wanted it, an amazing distinction between needs and wants for a little boy who had been through so much. He was adamant about this, so I was determined to show him that adults can keep their promises and his feelings did matter. After speaking with one of the team at our local rescue and explaining the situation, they said they'd picked the perfect doggy, Jock, for Craig's box. They explained that Jock definitely needed the box as he had just come to the home a few months earlier with a very large lump on his neck, most likely caused by trauma and infection. The home decided to operate on Jock to remove the lump, and Craig's box was the perfect gift to cheer Jock up. When I went back to Craig's mum to update him on the situation and the box going to a doggy that really needed it, and that Jock had recently had a lump removed from his neck, Craig's mum informed me that he was currently having investigations on a lump on his neck, most likely as a result of trauma. What were the chances? I recently spent some more time with Craig and his mum and asked him for some help with our new Animal Heroes workshop and ideas for random acts of kindness that we could suggest the children could do to encourage compassion and kindness to others. I read all these ideas to Craig and he loved them all. But when I came to the most important one, the one in the middle, be kind to yourself, a puzzled look came over his wee face and he said, I can't be kind to myself because that's selfish. Maybe that's something we could all learn from Craig. Whether it's a British thing or not, I don't know. But perhaps we've all forgotten how to be kind to ourselves and have some compassion, some self-compassion without feeling guilty or selfish. And we should encourage that in children. After all, how can we show kindness and compassion to others if we can't show it to ourselves first? We'll never make the world a perfect place, but we can certainly make it a better place. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie. This was really amazing. So I was just trying to check if we have direct questions from the audience. So we'll just take one question. Okay, so everyone is just still saying thank you. Okay, so we'll just take.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so all comments such as I'm speechless, excellent presentation, outstanding. So thank you very much. That was really amazing. So one specific question we got from someone, which is in relation to what you do. So the question is, I would like to know whether and under what conditions therapeutic use of animals is safe and effective, especially for children. So I heard you say one or two, but since this person really made it specific to you, we felt it to be needful for you to still buttress on that.
There are different types of categories for work with animals. You can have animal-assisted interventions, animal-assisted therapy, and animal-assisted activities. We're actually classed as animal-assisted activities. So although there can be some therapeutic benefit, we're not actually classed as providing therapy. So we're classed as providing animal-assisted activities. And all I would say is that when we bring animals into the activities that we run, they're such a leveler and they can calm the most exuberant of children down, and they can also bring the most withdrawn of children out of their shells. We had a workshop on Tuesday where we had 8 children who were wild, you know, they were really hyper. And then we brought in 2 little dogs and they just calmed right down. And we had another workshop a while ago where there was a little 5-year-old girl who was so withdrawn, she couldn't even tell you her name. And then the dogs arrived and she completely came out of her shell. So although we are classed as providing animal assisted activities, there are definite benefits. With regard to providing therapeutic work, that would be more along the lines of the speaker yesterday. So I think it's quite important. IAHIO has these specific categories, but I think it's quite important to know what category you're working in. So you're not offering something you're not actually qualified to deliver. But I would say from 10 years of experience, just having the animals there has a therapeutic benefit.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. So having the animals there has a therapeutic benefit. So for time's sake, we'll just have to quickly, there's a question. So let's just quickly take this one. If you can quickly respond to it, we would really appreciate. Okay, so the question is, do we have some literatures that shows those who get abused as children are likely going to abuse others? So that's a question from the chat.
There's quite a lot of research and literature out there at the moment. I think, again, there is definitely a recognised link between animal abuse, child abuse, domestic abuse, and elder abuse. I think it's very important, again, to reiterate one of the things that Phil said yesterday, is that it may, you know, a child abusing an animal may go on to show worrying behavior towards people. It's not a definite. But what we hope to do is, by recognizing these potential red flags in behavior in children, is to stop that behavior before it gets any worse. The whole reason I set up Fostering Compassion was to stop animal cruelty. I feel there's a lot of organizations that help an animal once the cruelty has happened, but how do we stop it happening in the first place? So we decided to work with the vulnerable group that may be more likely to go on to commit those acts of cruelty towards animals. So I think it's just something to be aware of as humane education practitioners. We never label a child, but what we are trying to do is work to reverse the cycle of abuse. Very often these children, if they're abusing an animal, they're reenacting what's happened to them. So it's just being mindful of the situation, the background, what's happening, and working towards stopping and reversing that cycle of abuse.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Leslie. We are super grateful. Thank you for being here with us. Yeah. Okay, so quickly, thank you everyone for being here so far. Just wanted to say that, please, if you have a question, quickly drop it while the speaker is still engaging with us, so we can quickly take it immediately she's done. So we would be calling on the next speaker right away. I can see a hand raised, but okay, it's no longer raised. Okay, so our next speaker quickly, she's someone that's been working with the Fonda Ninja for the last 7 years, and in her current role as project administrator, she is in charge of fundraising and marketing. She oversees the staff and their duties, and she has handled general office admin, and she's also the assistant dog school manager. She sits on the board as the secretary and manages all associated secretarial duties. She has also begun her journey, at Fonda Ninja. That was how she began, as a volunteer, and got more involved as time went by. And she is now working entirely for the organization. She has always been a keen animal lover and started getting involved with dog training in her early years. Since then, she has continued to train animals that have come into her life, such as dogs, horses, ducks, and rats. She has studied and followed all the new training techniques and have completely changed the way she trains and interacts with animals since she discovered the fuss-free positive reinforcement training methods many years ago. This new knowledge has allowed her to view animal behavior and training in a completely new light. She has also attended several workshops by local and international trainers on clicker training and animal behavior. So in her presentation, she will explain how Funda Ninja strives to create a more compassionate community using the fuss-free dog training classes for the children and their dogs, and so much more. There's a lot for her to say, and we couldn't get through her bio for the organization specifically that she works with, which is the Funda Ninja. So I believe that while she's speaking, we'll get to know about that more. So let's make welcome Lisa Button. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here. Just want to make sure everything's working. Is that all looking good?
Thank you.
Okay. Now, while that's, I'm also battling to get the screen onto one page. Oh, there we go. Right, so thank you for having me here today. Funda Ninja is an isiZulu phrase that roughly translates to learning with a dog. Funda Ninja is a non-profit organization which is based in the Mpukumeni Township area, which is just outside the town of Howick, which is in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. We are based in it's a semi-rural community where we're based, and approximately there's about 2,500 dogs and about 26,000 people. As I said, it's a semi-rural community, and most of the inhabitants are from the medium to low income bracket. We focus on humane animal welfare education. We want to be teaching these children about compassion, empathy, kindness, patience, etc. So Funda Ninja was started in 2009 by my colleague, Adrian Olivier, who started a holiday program for some children in the community, which was supposed to run for a 6-week period. It started off with a handful of children and their dogs, and at the end of the program, the children didn't want to stop. So the program continued, and that was 14 years ago. And it has grown and grown to where we have approximately 60 to 70 dogs and children who gather on a Friday afternoon with their dogs for the dog training classes. So we strive to change situations like this to this. I'm just going to go back so you can make that comparison. Those are obviously not loved or cared for animals. This is a complete change, a completely different picture, and that's what we strive to achieve. Through our dog school program, the children are learning patience and kindness, as well as compassion and empathy. Now, for a lot of these children, they've come from backgrounds where there is no patience or kindness or compassion shown to them. And as people have said in previous presentations, the children repeat the behaviors that happen to them at home. So we cannot expect a child to treat their dog with love and kindness when they're not being treated with that at home. So we do have a social welfare side of our program as well, which I will go into a little bit later on. But it basically, what we're trying to do is to change these children, to show these children that there is love and compassion. And the best way to get that is through the unconditional love of a dog. So we follow one welfare concept where we focus on both the animal welfare as well as the social welfare. The lady on the left is Nomondi. She's our animal welfare education officer, and she conducts home visits for all the children who join our program. And on those home visits, she checks that the animals' welfare at home is being taken care of so that they have the basics of food, water, shelter. She pushes the point about sterilizations. She explains that veterinary treatment is such a necessity and dogs are not chained. Those are just some of the basic principles that she instills in the people and make sure that the animals have those needs met. Then we have Zintle, who is our social welfare officer. She's an auxiliary social worker. And she also conducts home visits for all the children who join the program. Zintle will meet with the families and discuss any issues that they have. She offers support or counseling if they need. We assist a lot of the families with food parcels, and she also assists with grant applications, because a lot of these families are headed by either a grandparent or a single mom, an auntie, some of them are even an older sibling sort of runs the household. So Zintle will assist the caregivers or the parents with grant applications. She also, the food parcels, all the families are screened so that we're not just handing out free food, it's all controlled quite strictly. Just some images of our home visits. On the left there, Nomondi's arrived at a home. You can see the dogs and the child have come down to greet her. She has forms that she fills out, and she has a checklist to make sure that the needs of the dogs are being met. If there's something that is not being done correctly, for instance, if the dog is on a chain or he doesn't have water, she will leave material with them, written pamphlets, and explain to the owners of the dog why they need what they need, and any transgressions, she will explain to them what needs to be corrected. She normally gives them about a week to 10 days to make the changes, where she will do a follow-up home visit. If the changes have not been made, and she can see that the owners just have not made any effort, and the dog is still without water or food, or is chained to a tree, or is in the sun and doesn't have any shade, then we will report those situations to our local SPCA, who then will go in and issue a warning. We find that 99% of the time, once the SPCA has been, the dog's situation has changed. So there's very few dogs that have to actually be removed. Then on the right, Zintle is handing out a food parcel. Again, these food parcels are given to specific families with specific needs. I'm going to move my goodie down there, right? So on the animal welfare side, again, we just some more images of Nomondi's home visits, where she's checking on the basic requirements of the dogs. And you can see some of the families live in extreme poverty. Then obviously you get some more middle class families. But we expect that the dogs' welfare in those properties is the same throughout, regardless of the situation of the family. We will obviously help, we will assist where they need assistance, but the welfare of the animal is our primary concern. Then on the social welfare side, again, Zintle will meet with the family members. Her objective is to build relationships with those family members so that we are welcomed into the community. We want the community to understand the different services that we offer them. So you can see there on the left, we have provided this particular grandmother with some porridge and a blanket, which is part of our winter warmth project. We do hand out blankets and beanies and scarves to the elderly. The middle picture is a child receiving a pair of shoes. We've been fortunate to have some school shoes donated by one of the local footwear manufacturers, because a lot of these children, if their parents can't afford shoes, they don't end up going to school, or they go to school with very broken shoes and they get teased at school by the other kids. So a good, nice new pair of shoes is incredibly important for these children, and it's a game changer for them. And then again, just some more food parcels being handed out to a needy family. The dog school itself, the children arrive on a Friday afternoon with their own dog. So we're not, the children are not training dogs in any kind of shelter situation. They are their own dogs brought from home, and they rush home from school on a Friday afternoon, change their clothes, fetch their dogs, and rush off to Funda Ninja Dog School. So basically, we're teaching just your basic obedience, humane handling, as well as the animal welfare education. All our classes are taught with force-free positive reinforcement training methods. And this teaches the children that they don't have to force the dogs into any behavior. They are taught to use food to lure the dogs into a position and then reward them accordingly when they do the required behavior. And it just creates a more gentle handling approach. And the children learn that they can achieve things without using force, that they can get an animal, for instance, to do whatever they want to if the force-free technique has been implemented. There's just some nice photos taken from our dog school of the children handling their dogs. So basically, our aim is to change mindsets. We want these children to understand that dogs are sentient beings, that they have feelings and emotions, and that they're not just objects. And I can remember when I first joined Funda Ninja, a lot of the children, when they joined, they didn't have a name for their dog. You would ask them what their name was, and they would tell you, and then you'd ask the name of the dog, and they would say, what do you mean? Why do I need to name my dog? You know, it was still seen as an object and not a member of the family. And that was possibly about 8 years ago. And I must say, over the last 4 or 5 years, I have not seen one child joining our program with a dog with no name. So for me, that proves the importance of Funda Ninja in the community, because these children have learned over the years, and they've learned from each other, that their dog is a part of the family, and it also needs a name just like they do, which changes the whole way that they see their dog. We love this quote: you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So again, it just, you know, changing the mindsets is what it's all about. Societal change occurs with a holistic approach that includes working with the community, changing behaviors by building relationships, and recognizing the interrelation between animal and human welfare. So going back to the dog school, when the children arrive on a Friday afternoon, they are split into various classes. So we start with the baby puppy class for the youngest puppies. Then we go to a slightly older puppy class, and then we move on to the adult classes, and it goes up to the senior class. So the children work through the program and get moved through onto the next class each month. And then at the end of the sort of, not at the end, but the highest class is what we call our social club, where the children are allowed to remain forever. So they don't have to leave when they've finished a certain length of time. They can stay with us for as long as they choose to. All the classes are taken by one of the community members who are the instructors. They are young people from the community who have worked through the program with their own dogs. So what we do is we watch these children as they progress through the program. And when they get to the top class, we identify youngsters who have leadership skills, who have good dog handling skills, who have a gentle hand with their dogs, and would be good role models for the other children. So these boys, mostly boys, there's a few girls, but predominantly boys, will then team up with one of the more senior instructors, and they will learn how to take a class of their own. And then eventually they will be put into a different class where they will instruct their class on their own. So it's teaching them a lot of extra life skills that they didn't have before. And it's difficult for them because they're young boys themselves or young girls, and they haven't had any of that training. They haven't been taught how to train a class. So they're learning new skills which will help them in their future as well. At the end of each month, the children are put through a very basic little test to see that they have learned the basics, things like sips and down, walking on a loose leash, etc. And if they've passed, then they get promoted to the next class, the class up from theirs. And they each awarded with a little rosette, which a lot of them decide to put onto the dog, which is really a lovely gesture because it makes us realize that they have, they see the dog as part of their team. It's not just them who has been rewarded for something, but the dog has been rewarded because he's also done the work. And then they also take home a little treat, something for the child and for the dog. Alongside our Friday afternoon dog school, we run our veterinary clinic, which we provide primary veterinary care for the dogs at Fundinenja as well as dogs from the community. So anybody from the community is welcome to bring their dogs to us. We provide rabies vaccinations, 5-in-1 vaccinations. We do deworming, tick and flea control. We treat skin problems and ear and eye infections, etc., etc. If there are any more severe medical issues, we do refer those to either the SPCA or a private veterinarian in Howick. There's just some images that on the left you can see that's our little veterinary station. It's very rural, very rustic, but it works. And the veterinarian is Dr. Danny, and she's absolutely amazing. I think her record is she's probably, I think was about 70 dogs that she processed in about a 2.5-hour period. So she's incredibly efficient, very caring, very, very committed and very compassionate to both the children and the dogs. All the information from each person who brings their dog through is recorded onto her laptop. So she has the name and address and the treatment given, the name of the dog, all that information is captured on her laptop. We also have our monthly sterilization program. We try and sterilize a minimum of 15 dogs at a time. The classroom at the school where we're based is converted into a little veterinary clinic for the day. And Dr. Lee Pakanik is our veterinarian, and she does majority dogs, but we do have the odd cat that comes through. But she will do the sterilizations. Her assistant Di is always by her side and helps her. And then we also have Debbie Cook, who's a senior animal health technician who does all the pre-surgery preparations. We also try and get some of our instructors involved because they're learning new skills, and it might open up opportunities for them to pursue careers in veterinary medicine or at least work at a veterinary clinic. So they're taught the basics like shaving the dog before the surgery, and then they look after them as they're recovering, etc., etc. So it just gives them a whole new aspect of animal welfare to get involved with. Just some of our statistics over the last year, looking at 2022, we vaccinated 1,451 dogs for rabies. We treated 956 dogs at our veterinary clinic. We sterilized 93 dogs, and we did 632 home visits. Also on the Friday afternoons, we run our little dog shop, which is a little community shop, which is open to the whole community. We sell all dog-related items, so your collars and leashes, food, beds and blankets, dog houses, at very, very reasonable prices. A lot of the items are donated by the local people in this area. The little town of Howick is predominantly a retirement community, which has become over the last few years. And we find that a lot of the elderly people, when a dog has passed on, they are not going to get a new dog, so they pass on all the dog's items to us. So we get their dog beds and their collars and leads and their houses and whatever they have. We often get people donating kennels, dog houses as well, if their dog has passed on, or I've had several people contact me and say, I bought this fancy doghouse for my dog 5 years ago, and the dog has never slept in it. It sleeps in my bed. Would you like the kennel, the doghouse? So, you know, we do get the donated ones as well, which we pass on. So the dog shop, our shop is very, very popular. All the items are sold at very, very, very reduced prices. So we literally just put a few rands, because I'm in South Africa, on each item, but it's more because we don't want to just be handing out free things to the community. We don't want to be seen as an organization that just hands out free stuff to people. And if they have paid something for it, it means more to them and it's more valuable. So that's why we have a small price on each item. Those are our lovely dog houses that are made to order. So if people want to buy one, they come to us and pay the money. We put the details into our book, and then we order the kennel, the dog house on their behalf. And the week later it's made and they can come and collect it. And it's really heartwarming to see how these orders have picked up over the years, because people are realizing that they need to provide a house for their dog. They do need adequate shelter for their dogs. So as it's obvious that the importance of having the dog houses to keep them warm in winter, and also the harsh African sun. It gets incredibly hot in South Africa in summer, and a lot of the dogs don't have adequate shelter. So if they've got a nice wooden kennel, they can at least escape from the sun and the rain. That kennel on the right at the bottom, you can see is a second-hand kennel. That is one that was donated to us. And our animal welfare officer will identify families who are worthy of a free dog house. And those are people who have shown to be taking good care of their dogs. So they have ticked all the boxes. They're doing what we've asked. The dog is not chained. The dog has food and water. And they really are taking care of their dog, but they can't afford to buy a brand new dog house. So we will then reward them with one of our donated ones. Apart from all of that, we also run holiday workshops and theory lessons. So Nomonde will do the animal welfare lessons. She teaches the children about the 5 basic freedoms, reading dogs' body language, being safe around dogs, the importance of sterilization, explaining dog diseases, and so on. So she will do these lessons once a month. The children at the dog school are told the week before, don't bring your dogs next week, and they have a theory lesson. The reason we tell them not to bring their dogs is so that they're not distracted and they can focus and concentrate on what's being taught. Nomonde has some very good posters and videos that she uses in those lessons, and they're all in isiZulu, which is their home language. So there's no chance of them not understanding it. It's all very clear and easy for them to follow. And those lessons we found are valuable because the children all have that opportunity then to ask questions if they're not sure of things. And we make sure that they go home at the end of the day having learned something new to what they came in with. And then on the social welfare side, Zintle will also do monthly workshops where she covers things like children's rights, providing a safe place for the children to go, who to go to in times of need, explaining body development, teaching respect, kindness, punctuality, empathy, compassion, etc. We also cover these topics in holiday workshops, and we found the holiday workshops are vital because firstly, it keeps the children off the streets because a lot of their parents work while the children are home in the holidays, and obviously they can get up to mischief. So those holiday workshops are really valuable. So then we also do workshops for adults. We work in collaboration with other organizations, and we cover topics such as parenting techniques, substance abuse, gender-based violence. So there's no other organizations in the community of Mpopomeni where we're based that are doing any of those particular, covering any of those topics. So it's vital that we call on outside organizations to come into the community with us and cover these topics for people who are suffering from substance abuse or gender-based violence. And then we help the caregivers with some parenting techniques. We're constantly having to upskill our team, mainly because, as I said earlier, they're young boys or girls from the community who don't have any training when it comes to teaching, and they do need help when it comes to teaching a class of young children who are not necessarily well behaved. The dogs aren't always well behaved, so they need help with learning how to deal with problematic children or dogs, how to avoid dog fights within the class, how to teach the positive reinforcement technique, how to keep the children engaged in their class, how to keep the classes fun and interesting, how to read dogs' body language, because if they're not understanding the dog's body language, they can't help the child. So if a dog, for instance, is fearful, that needs to be handled completely different to a dog that's confident and bouncy and trying to play with the dog on either side of it. So they need to understand how to read the body language. It's very important, and just general dog handling skills. So whenever we get a chance, we hold a workshop for our team where those various topics will be covered, and the youngsters are given the opportunity to ask questions or discuss what's happened in their class and how can they rectify it, or if they have any specific challenges, how to overcome those. So it's a really good opportunity for them to be able to open up and discuss what's happening in their classes. Then back to our family support program, which is run by the social worker. Again, just covering the food assistance that we do. And then a while ago, we were donated some vegetable seedlings. So we went through the community and worked with some of the families, helping them to establish vegetable gardens, because we want them to try and be self-sufficient, so they're not relying on us for all their needs. And also assisting with government grants. So a lot of people are not aware that they can apply for a government grant, which does help them financially. And Zintle, the social worker, will help them with that and help them make those applications. Another section of the program is our winter warmth drive. Every winter we do a social media appeal, and we get a tremendous response from our supporters, so that we can give each child and dog in the program a blanket and or a jersey. And then we normally have extra blankets or beanies or little ponchos, which we then distribute to some of the children in the school. And we normally focus on the younger children. So the picture on the right, I think, was the grade R children from the school where we're based. And they also benefited from some nice winter warm woolies. Career opportunities open up for these youngsters that have worked through the program, either our instructors or children who are just taking part in the dog school. They're learning new skills. They're learning that there are opportunities out there in the animal related industries. We've had several of our team members move on to pursue careers in dog grooming parlors. We had one chap who went and did a canine bomb detection work, and veterinary clinics. We've got a couple who have remained in their jobs for many years and are really, really thriving and part of the team. And we've recently just had people contact us and ask us for possible employees that they're looking for new people to join their team, and we've been able to put a few names forward. So it's nice to know that businesses out there are relying on us, because they know that these youngsters have been through a good training program and have had good animal handling training. Another aspect is our fencing program, our fencing project, where we're trying to get as many dogs off chains as possible. Obviously, because it's illegal to chain dogs, it doesn't allow them free movement, and obviously unchaining them will reduce the stress and many behavioral issues related to that. Those are just some of the images of our fencing project. We don't fence the entire property because it's too expensive. Fencing in South Africa is extremely expensive. So we fence sections of the property, which allows the dog to get off the chain and have freedom to run around and play like they should do. Our main aim is to build relationships. We want these children to learn to build a relationship with their dog, because a lot of their relationships at home have not been successful. Some of them are non-existent. The children don't get recognized for their achievements. They don't get praised for anything, which is why we use the dog school for these children to learn that they can have a relationship. And what better way to do that than using a dog? We recently did a survey at the end of last year. It was just to assess how the children viewed Funda Ninja and what they got from it. So we did a simple survey just to establish the level of success of the dog school program. And the final results were very pleasing and confirmed that we are indeed making a difference in the Mpopomeni community. The results were 98% of those interviewed said that they attended Funda Ninja as they loved learning with their dogs. 77% said they had learned a lot. 100% reported that their family members had learned more about dogs since they started attending the dog school program. 78% said that their dogs were now much better behaved. 80% indicated that they treated their dogs differently since joining Funda Ninja. And that to us was quite significant. 80% was quite a large percent. And that is all we want. We want them to be changed, to see that their dogs are part of their family and that they are treating their dogs differently. That was quite an important one for us to notice. And education is key to change. If we don't show them a kinder, better way, they will never question their choices or decisions. So we are unlike most organizations. Funda Ninja is quite a unique organization in South Africa. We have a lot of rescue organizations. And Funda Ninja is different because we don't go and remove dogs from a situation. We educate the owners, because if you don't educate them as to what they're doing incorrectly, you're never going to change the cycle. It's just going to continue and continue. But if we can prevent what's happening, then, and especially with the children, because it's easier to educate the children because they're willing to learn. And they will then grow into responsible adults and treat their animals responsibly and pass that information down to their children, which is why the education part of our program is so vitally important. That's it from me. I think I made up some time for you.
All right, thank you so much, Lisa. It was super amazing. I'm glad you left some time, so I'll just go straight to asking one of the pre-conference question. And this person wanted to know, I think she works probably in the rural environment or wants to. She said, what can be done to improve awareness and consciousness of rural population on health risks involved with human interaction with animals? I don't know if it's something you can rest.
Yeah, that basically comes into our education program. So part of it is educating the children that they need to take care of their dogs because they need to stay healthy. And healthy dogs in the community equals healthy people in the community. And we have controlled the spread of rabies in Mpopomeni. We have not had, I don't know if you're aware, but South Africa has a very big problem at the moment with rabies. It is out in some areas it is out of control, and the government is struggling to get on top of it. But through our strict rabies protocols and our programs, we have controlled rabies in that community. We have not had one single case of rabies for all the time that we've been in that community, which is 14 years. So we've definitely made a big difference in the animal health side, and the children are understanding that their dog's health is important, and they've learned to identify when the dogs are not well, and they bring them through to our clinic. And they know now that, you know, especially with worms as well, you know, if the dog's got worms, the baby's going to get worms, the children are going to get worms. So they've learned to identify when the dogs are not well and bring them to us. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, sure. I believe so. Thank you so much. It did. Okay, so someone has a question from the chat, and the person just wants to know, is there any testing of their learning, competencies, knowledge, and skills at the end of their training and assessments of practical implementation of what they learned?
Not really. You know, a lot of the children come and go. Some of the children will start off and then their situation or circumstances change and they can't come back. So, you know, not all the children will stay for a long period of time. So it's a bit difficult to do some sort of assessments. But we do from time to time, like we did that little survey, and sometimes in the classes they do little questionnaires and ask the children and sort of assess what they've learned through the program through that. But it's on a very casual basis. It's not a strict program that we sort of, you know, go through in any particular structure, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So interesting comments. I like, okay, someone said that he is impressed by the 3-dimensional approach, the dog, child, community. Yeah, so he was just saying that was really an holistic way to cause an intervention in the community. So thank you very much. And just one last question. So this person wants to know, person said, I'm interested in the stress experienced by human caregivers when they are the guardian for a dog with behavior problems, such as on-lead reactivity to other dogs, and how different training methods can worsen or reduce this. So I think the person just wants to really get clearer perspective if it's something you would, if it's something you want to respond to on how, how that can actually be possible.
Okay, we do, look, the majority of the dogs that come into the classes that join the program are pretty well socialized. So we don't have a lot of reactivity, but there certainly are some cases. And that's where we will assist the instructors to how to deal with those particular dogs. So if there is a dog that's reactive, for instance, we will make sure there's a decent amount of space between them and the next dog. Again, they are told to use the treats. So the children, when they join the class, they're all given a little pouch of dog treats that they use to train the dogs. And some of those dogs need a higher reward, a higher, what's the word? A higher value treat. So where most of the dogs are just they just use the little, the dog food, the dog cubes. For some of those more reactive dogs, we'll get a higher value treat, so something sort of meaty, a nice meaty chew or something. And then those children are not necessarily asked to take part in the class along with the other children. They're in the class, but they don't have to follow what the other children are doing. If their dog is over aroused or overexcited or aggressive or reactive, then they're told to just do something slightly different. So they're never allowed to discipline the dog harshly. If the dog is reacting in a way that they're not comfortable with, the instructor will then say to them, okay, just scatter some food on the floor, let the dog sniff through, you know, using his other senses, which helps them relax more. Or we'll give them something to chew. If it's a puppy that's completely over the top and it just doesn't want to listen, we'll get a nice chew for the puppy, and then he can lie quietly next to where the class is happening and chew on the chew. And we don't force the child to take part in the class. You know, he's not going to be ridiculed or disciplined, or, you know, we want the child and the dog to enjoy their session with us at Fundanenja. So yeah, if there is a reactive dog, they are treated differently, but each one is treated independently depending on what the reactivity is about.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really amazing, the response. Each of
Thank
them
you.
are treated independently, and at the end of the day, there's a mutual value. They have to, the children and the child rather, and the dog has to really enjoy the process. Okay, thank you
Correct.
so much. So I initially said he for one of the persons that responded to a question. So it's actually so a she, not a he, please. I'm really sorry about that. All right, thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
Yeah, super grateful, and we'll have to quickly go to the next speaker for today. Speakers, actually. All right, so we have two amazing persons who will be coming to talk to us shortly, and I'll just go through their bio. So firstly, the first person, she's the lead facilitator of the Underdog project in Cape Town. That's the compassionate force behind all operational aspects. So as a registered counselor and qualified dog trainer, currently pursuing an animal behavioral diploma, her unique blend of skills continually enrich our programs that's in the organization, the Underdog Project. With endless patience and unwavering dedication, she creates a safe and therapeutic environment for youth and dogs to learn and grow together. She's a trusted adult figure who goes above and beyond to support all beneficiaries, both human and four-legged. Okay, that her presence is invaluable in fostering a kind and nurturing space where meaningful connections between people and animals thrive. And the second person, quickly, she's a facilitator and head of communications at the Underdog Project. And there was this missing puzzle piece in the team, but upon her joining, they felt that she had unlocked a new level of potential. With an honors in psychology and her deep investment in the well-being and support of children and dogs, she embodies all the Underdog Project's values and is another trusted, kind, and safe adult that holds the space in the therapeutic environment they create. Her dedication and commitment to the work that they do and her contagious can-do attitude has been invaluable to the organization. So the organization here is the Underdog Project. There's a short bio, but in why they are presenting, they would talk about it more. Thank you so much. Let's make welcome Mitchell and Emily as they take the mic from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi there, my name is Michelle, and this is my colleague Emily over here. And together with our small team, we run an organization called the Underdog Project. So thank you so very much for having us here today and for just giving us this opportunity to talk about a subject that we are very deeply passionate about. And we were so inspired by the title of this conference because it word for word speaks to what our work aims to do, which is to foster empathy between animals and humans. So just before I start, I wanted to show you a picture of our team. So we've got in the middle our managing director, Nina, and then kneeling at the bottom in the black is Emily, who's sitting next to me. And then on either side of Nina, we have Sia and Easy. They are ex-beneficiaries and are now intern facilitators for us, and then myself in the yellow. And then, of course, an important member as well at the bottom there is Pixie, and she's one of the dogs on our program. Okay, so just to start with, what is the Underdog Project? So we are a nonprofit organization that leverages the power of the human-animal connection to meaningfully impact and uplift the lives of at-risk youth and shelter dogs through mutually beneficial interactions. And this is done by combining positive reinforcement dog training, humane education, and 21st century life skills. And our organization fosters inherent empathy, offers psychosocial supports, and improves the lives of dogs in the shelter environments, as well as their chances of adoption. So how do we do this? We select untrained shelter dogs as therapy partners and work together through positive reinforcement dog training techniques, teaching life skills and humane education to youth, as a form of non-invasive group therapy in weekly 2-hour-long sessions that are facilitated by a registered counselor. So our sessions are divided into 2 parts. The first part of our session is concentrated on spending time with our screened shelter dogs. And that includes time out with walking, which we call conscious or kind walking, positive reinforcement dog training, as well as other safe, positive animal interactions. And for some children who join our program, this could be one of their very first safe and constructive interactions with a willing animal. The second part of our session is spent in our classroom without the dogs present. And this is where we complete planned and structured activities that teach the youth a whole lot of various life skills and humane education. And these may include things like identifying emotions of both humans and animals, healthcare for both humans and animals, identity, self-esteem, that kind of thing. So why do we do this? As I'm sure you're all aware, there are countless young people facing daily stresses, dealing with past or present trauma, and living without the support that they need. There's things like hunger, poverty, parents who work long hours, under-resourced schools, or limited or no after-school care, and limited access to therapeutic interventions or caring adults. And that's just some of the realities that our youth are facing. In most developed countries, children by the age of 18 will have experienced 3 instances of trauma, but in South Africa, where we're based, children living in these contexts will experience 3 in a year. At the same time, we have countless dogs and other animals that are in need of support and upliftment, over and above their basic needs for food and shelter. Homelessness, dogfighting, abandonment, and abuse are just a few of the very real and worldwide issues that animals are subjected to. So if we can agree that dogs are sentient beings, then we can theorize that animals share the same emotions and feelings as humans, and therefore also suffer from feelings of abandonment, loneliness, and fear. So with that in mind, Underdog set out to find a way to support 2 of these vulnerable groups, or better, offer them a space where they could actually support each other. The benefits of our program for both youth and dogs, you're just going to see them pop up on the screen. So some of the benefits for youth include awakening their inherent empathy and compassion, building self-esteem and self-awareness, humane education and environmental awareness, encouraging a positive means of communication, introducing responsibility and leadership, having a sense of reward from helping an animal in need, teaching goal setting and empowerment, demonstrating cross-cultural tolerance, learning patience, and providing a reliable and safe space. And then at the same time, the dogs are receiving many benefits from these structured training sessions, some of which include overcoming anxiety, gaining some confidence, learning basic skills, feeling loved, getting some exercise, getting some mental stimulation, having playtime, socializing with children, a significant reduction in kennel stress, learning some manners, building bonds and trust with humans. So how does our program foster empathy? It has been theorized that empathy generalizes from animals to people. So in other words, by teaching humane education that promotes a pro-animal attitude, an increased level of empathy for animals may result in an increased level of empathy for humans. So how does this work that we can promote a pro-animal attitude? In the context where we work, many of the children we meet have had some sort of negative experience with dogs, or they have been taught to see dogs as non-sentient beings that are at the disposal of humans, or that there's something that they should fear. A pro-animal attitude is therefore not the common default. So we pose the question, how can we reframe some of this thinking and facilitate a more positive connection that enables different and more empathetic perceptions of dogs and other animals? We have witnessed how offering a space for youth and dogs to make a meaningful connection can foster empathy. What is so special about this connection is that an animal has no judgment. They don't care how old the person is or how intelligent or the color of their skin or if they're privileged or not. They just accept you as you are and how you show up. They simply respond to that positive reinforcement, that love and that empathy. So having dogs as the perfect therapy partner, the youth learn to value the lives of animals and begin to see that animals have rights and needs of their own. Here's a quote from one of our youth that demonstrates it, so I'm just going to read it quickly. I wasn't a fan of pit bulls because most of the dogs that are within my community were pit bulls. And what I remember about pit bulls is that they are fighters. They're strong and they bite, so stay away from them. So I always didn't really love. I didn't love them at all because of that picture that I saw within my community. But when I came here, meaning Underdog, that's when I realized like, oh, so it's a different story from my community than here. Then that's when I started getting the love. That's when I started feeling more and more and actually realizing that they do have feelings. In order to reach the goal of supporting the development of empathetic young adults, our organization takes various steps and uses every opportunity to encourage an empathetic mindset. We'll now give you a brief sketch of a typical session and some examples of these steps and opportunities we're talking about. So going back to our session, which is broken down into the 2 parts. So part 1 is the time spent interacting with the dogs, whether it be walking or training or grooming or playing. So we take the dogs out the kennel and we explain that it is important for dogs to have time outside after spending hours in a kennel. We call our walking kind walking, as we encourage our young trainers to be really patient with the dog as they do their sniffing, their bathroom business, and the simple act of sensing their environment in the way and the multifaceted way that dogs do. We're sure to explain the importance of exercise, play, affection, and mental stimulation for a dog that is similar to humans' needs as well. When training, we pay close attention to how a dog is managing in the session. We reiterate we need to really meet the dog where they're at and often ask our youth, what do you think the dog is feeling? Or what does it maybe need in the situation? Sometimes they might need a mental break or water break, or maybe they need to just go and have a sniff. We have a wonderful example of how this mindset has been passed on to our youth. So this is a personal example that happened not too long ago. 2 of our youth were working with a dog named Matilda, and I was trying to help them teach Matilda a particular trick, but she was very distracted that day and we were struggling to teach her the trick. And I commented, sure, Matilda, we're not getting anywhere today. And one of our youth commented back, it's okay, we just need to be patient with her. What makes this example even more wonderful is that our youth teach us too, and they remind us what our core values are. A crucial part of our program is teaching our youth how to read dog body language. So this is covered more in the second part of our session, which I'll get to later. When out with our dogs, it's important that our youth are taking in what a dog is communicating in order to assist the dog to feel comfortable and safe. Apologies if you can hear my dogs in the background. This might be having to move a dog further away from another dog perhaps, or even taking them back to their kennel if they've had enough for the day. So a good example of our teaching being put into practice was we had a 9-year-old child on our program who witnessed passing dogs that were walking by in the shelter, because there's a lot of dogs that are being walked. So currently there's a lot of dogs being walked in my road. So this dog was walking very close to the ground and he was crouched quite low and he had his tail between his legs. And the child looked at this dog and said, that dog looks scared. So this is wonderful evidence that the children that we're working with are starting to take in what we're teaching and recognizing the real life situations of how animals could be feeling through their body language. Something we're quite adamant about getting right is that we use the principle of we're working with the dog, we're not using the dog. For example, in a simple question to our youth, we would ask, what dog do you want to work with today? Which sees the animal as a partner, but not a tool. In part 2 of our sessions, this time spent inside the classrooms without the dogs, we continue the theme of awakening empathy. So for example, what we'll start with is a check-in. So how did the session go with the dog? What worked, what didn't? Were there any challenges? How did the dog cope? What still needs to be worked on? That kind of thing. And then if one of our youth share an example that the dog didn't really want to do certain things today, we talk about it and we ask what they noticed and what they did instead. And then I'm careful to explain that sometimes, like us, dogs aren't always in the mood to do something and we should never force them to do it for their own sake. We also offer time to journal and reflect on the session. So it's a way to look back on their progress with their training and the progress on the dog. And we spend the largest portion of this time covering humane education activities and life skills. So some examples of these would be the dog body language using visual aids, and then also similarities between human and dog emotions, the importance of communication, first aid for both dogs and humans, dealing with anger and frustration in daily life and when training with dogs, and then the importance of sterilization. So there's no better way to demonstrate the impact of our work that we do than the power of a human-animal connection that reaches beyond the children's time with us than with a brief story. So I'm just going to share a story about a young man that attended a session with us. And Eddie arrived at our sessions, and he was from a youth care center that we work closely with. So he mentioned a few things about his background and his family outside of this youth care center. And he stated that he'd always liked dogs, but they were mainly used for breeding and for dog fighting. And he spoke of how his family had many female pit bulls at home that had lots of puppies. And from this and other information that he shared with us, it was clear that his family was somehow involved in gangs and dog fighting. So once Eddie had completed the 12-week program with us, we offer each child a space to talk about their experience or write about their experience, what they enjoyed, what they did, and that kind of thing. And Eddie was a very vocal child and was happy to share his experience. And he mentioned that he enjoyed his time with us and he was sad to be leaving, and he really loved and would miss the dogs he was working with. He mentioned that before he came to Underdog, he liked dogs, but he didn't really know much about them and what kind of needs they have. He also continued to say how he loves dogs more now, and he told us about in his neighborhood, so not at the youth care center, but in his neighborhood where he lives, there is a dog that is always kept on a chain, and he went and asked the neighbor if he could walk the dog because he felt sorry for it. He also mentioned how when he's at the youth care center, there's sometimes he sits outside when he eats his dinner and there's a stray dog that wanders around there, which he tries to feed some of his supper to. He said that he sometimes would even try and use some of his supper to train the dog with some of the tricks he'd learned at Underdog. And that before he came to Underdog, he didn't really care about the stray dogs and he would ignore and chase them away. So with Eddie, we saw a noticeable change from the beginning of his sessions at Underdog to the end. And Eddie had an opportunity to make a connection with dogs at Underdog that shaped the way he treated dogs outside the program.
Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, we spoke about a mutually beneficial connection. So why our organization believes that it is so important when working in the therapeutic space with animals, I'm just going to touch on that a little bit. So the steps we take to draw out empathy help support our goal of fostering a mutually beneficial connection. Our program strives, so we strive to offer a program in which both the youth and the dogs benefit, and the work we do meaningfully impacts the lives of both of these vulnerable groups. It would only make sense that if we are teaching our youth to be empathetic towards the animals they are working with, by, for example, putting themselves in their shoes or reading their body language and taking the appropriate steps to ensure they feel comfortable and safe, then the work that we do with the dogs will, as a result, create a positive and uplifting experience for them as well. So why do we want to ensure the connection is mutually beneficial? As we mentioned earlier, most of the youth and shelter dogs we work with live with extreme daily stresses, and both have experienced one or more traumas in their lives. Therefore, we believe it is important that when working with vulnerable populations, we are sensitive to their needs and emotions. The last outcome we want is to have our activities and training add to their already existing levels of stress. When we look at it this way, it made us realize just how valuable a mutually beneficial connection can be for these two groups in particular. By fostering a relationship between the two, a youth at risk and a shelter dog, perhaps they could teach one another and both benefit greatly from a kind, safe, and trusting connection that might also bring growth and healing for both of them. We are not suggesting that we have a perfect model, but rather in the realm of working with animals in a therapeutic space, it is certainly something worth considering and perhaps an aspect worth tapping into. So I would like to offer you two cases from our own experience that explain the difference between a connection we did not consider mutually beneficial and therefore put a stop to, and B, another which we would consider mutually beneficial and is ultimately what we strive for. So our first example was we were working with a group of children that joined us for weekly sessions. The children that attended were from a children's home and were between the ages of 8 and 10. All had backgrounds of trauma and neglect, which often meant that when they came to us, we needed to be ready for a variety of different and often challenging behaviors. The children in this group were particularly high energy and somewhat frenetic. Initially, they enjoyed the novelty of being outside with the dog, but as time wore on, we realized that the children were bored of the dogs and were far more invested and interested in staying inside the classroom, doing arts and crafts and games and activities. What we also began to notice was that there was a significant difference in the dog's behavior when we worked with this particular group of children compared to others on our program. With this particular group, we found that the dogs would show signs of stress behavior. The children would sometimes lash out at the dogs, throw things nearby, or yank on the leads, for example. It seemed that when these children and dogs were paired together, the mutually beneficial connection was not taking place. The children were not interested in working with the dogs, and the dogs were being put under stress. So as mentioned earlier, one of our goals at Underdog is to help manage or diminish the stress and certainly not exacerbate it. So what we concluded was that it seemed as though the children were benefiting more from the connections they were making with the facilitators and volunteers rather than those rather than the connection with the dog. So instead of insisting we go out and spend time with the dogs to try and encourage and foster the connection between them, which is what we aim to do at our organization, we instead ask the question, are the dogs benefiting from these sessions with this particular group? And are the children benefiting from time out with the dogs? Obviously, our answer was no. So we decided to complete the remainder of the year with this group and ensured that we spent more time inside and less time with the dogs, which seemed to be an appropriate decision for both the children and the dogs for this particular example. Then I'd like to share, as I said, an example of a mutually beneficial connection taking place. So a few years ago, we had a child join our program that had suffered severe abuse and as a result had become an elective mute. We'll call him Owen. This meant that he could speak, but he chose not to. We had never heard him speak. And so he didn't speak to us and we didn't hear him speak at all when he joined us. So in training dogs, although they cannot necessarily understand language, we always encourage our kids to use the word of what they're asking the dog to do, like sit, lie down, pause up, that kind of thing. But this is never an absolute, as the dog will perform a task by using a treat, lure, or a gesture. In one of the dog training sessions where we were teaching the dog to sit, we noticed that Owen chose to take himself and his dog a little bit further away from the rest of the group. With utter amazement, we then heard him say the word sit when practicing the trick with his dog. So although he had chosen not to speak to us, it seemed that he felt safe enough to speak to one of the dogs on our program, and we were honored to be able to offer him the space and the opportunity to do that. The dog benefited greatly from these interactions as well, because he was a sensitive dog that needed someone to work with him slowly and at his own pace. So being removed from the group helped him settle and feel more at ease so he could concentrate on his human trainer and they could work together as a team. The perfect example of a mutually beneficial connection. Furthermore, in a research study conducted by UCT on the Underdog Project, it was titled The Disadvantaged Youth Subjective Experiences on the Impact of a Dog Training Intervention, a South African exploration. And this was conducted in 2022 with youth on our program. Various themes were concluded through the thematic analysis of the qualitative questions that were asked. Themes included a sense of belonging, so feelings of safety and openness, pro-sociality, treatments towards dog and building relationships, a positive change in beliefs and behaviors, and self-improvement, which included emotional regulation and confidence and self-esteem. So at the Underdog Project, we could say that the core of our work is connection. Connection is a topic that could be discussed at length, and we are sure that there would be a multitude of perceptions and definitions. One important thing we have noticed about it, however, is that it is not one-sided. And as an organization, we believe that to achieve a healthy, positive, and safe connection, we must consider both sides. Before ending off, we'd love to share a few cases that shed light on the greater impact that our organization has on the communities it works with. We are really proud of our youth for taking their skills, knowledge, and awakened empathy beyond our program. So the Underdog Project runs 3 separate programs, the first being a youth builder, the second a past graduate program, and then a peer leader program, each teaching the youth various skills and focusing on different things and covering different modules as well. So our past grad group are those who've been with us for more than 2 years. And we found out that the past grads are known in the community as the ones on the Underdog Project. So people come to them for advice and assistance on how to care for their animals when something goes wrong. It is the youth on our program who are the ones telling their neighbors how to care for their animals or alerting the shelter we work with of animal abuse or neglect that they see in their community. You can just imagine the sense of pride that they must feel when a community member approaches them and asks them for advice. And of course, the pride that we feel as an organization. Another brief example we'd like to share with you was in our youth builder session. So this is when the children join us for the first time. So they've been with us for less than a year or so. One of our youth, we'll call him Kanyo, brought his friend Leah with to an underdog session. They arrived early while we were still setting up. So instead of joining a game with the other boys, Kanyo took Leah on a tour around our classroom with much pride. They stood at the wall with all the posters of dog body language, how to greet a dog, what dogs should and shouldn't eat, obviously all our educational posters. And Kanyo explained what they were looking at. He said to Leah, this is how you greet a dog. This is what we're going to be doing today. It was lovely to see. Then later on, while we were out with the dogs, I noticed that Leah kind of knew some of the tricks that we were teaching, but he'd never been to an underdog session before. So I asked him, I said, have you done dog training before? And he responded saying he hadn't, but Kanyo had been showing him what to do, and they were both training his dog at home together. This is exactly what we hope for our kids to A, feel proud of what they know and the organization they're a part of, and B, take the things they learn back into the communities and extend the empathy beyond our project. Obviously, it is quite difficult. The difficulty about our work is that it's hard to measure. We don't have statistics or numbers that can demonstrate the power of our work. We cannot measure how much empathy a child has when starting our program and measuring it again when they leave. And although having concrete statistics would help us quantify the impact that we have stories. And for now, stories are our most powerful tool. So thank you so much for having us today and for listening to our presentation. It's really been such a privilege to be here, and also hearing all the other organizations speak as well. Very, very cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's been great to hear your presentation and hear about your work and everything. And thank you to Praise, who had hosted the event up till now as well. There are a few questions that are already available. So someone was asking in the chat, and she said, since these are sheltered dogs and you're working with children, how do you go about ensuring the safety of the children?
So this is an absolute priority for us at Underdog. So this is where we are very careful with the dogs that we do work with. So there's a double screening process. So the shelter we work very closely with, and they pre-select dogs for us that they know don't have a bite history and that already are okay with children. So they go through that screening process. And then we do a second one as well ourselves with our interns, where we just take the dog out, get to know them a little bit, and just try and figure out what kind of goals we have for that dog and what kind of child to pair the dog with, because obviously sometimes we get really big dogs and very strong dogs, and we wouldn't want to pair that kind of dog with a very small child. So we just go through that screening process just to make sure, and we haven't had any incidents, thankfully. But yeah, that's how it goes at the moment.
Okay, fantastic. So someone was asking, Suzanne Leroux was asking, and she said, great work by the Underdog Project. Can you please share the reference for the research project done at UCT that was mentioned earlier?
Sure, we can do that.
So I'm not sure if it has been published.
Actually, that's true, yes. Because it's so recent, it might not have been published yet, but we can share the paper if anyone would like to see it. We do have that.
Yeah, I'll put our email address in the chat, so you can just pop us an email.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Then someone was asking during the pre-conference questions and was asking that what does it take to train one of these dogs that already had gone through some level of trauma and everything?
What does it take to train one of them?
Yes.
So it's so specific to the particular dog. So we've got some dogs that have also been on our program for a very long time and others that are new. So they come and go if they get adopted. But sometimes the training can be very slow. And that's part of the process which we like to also educate the children in, is that we need to work at the pace of the dog, and just like we would work at the pace of the human. If they've gone through something incredibly traumatic, they need time to recover and they need a patient and understanding trainer. So that is part of the educational process as well. It's just sometimes it's really long, but we also can train things that don't work, and we need to adapt to the situation. So sometimes we'll try and train a particular trick that doesn't work, and for that particular dog they are scared of a certain thing. Like we've got one dog that we teach dogs to weave through cones, and one dog is particularly scared of the cones because they symbolize something fearful to him. So in that situation, we'd rather not put him in a situation that's going to cause fear, but then we adapt the situation to suit the dog's needs and the child's needs. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so someone is asking, let me see. Someone is saying, it's interesting. Okay, so maybe on psychometric assessment of before and after the children's empathy, compassion, reduced anxiety, etc., working with a clinical psychologist or psychometrist will help in the data you are talking about. So that's a suggestion from Dr.
A brilliant suggestion, which we are really trying to do. So that's something that's come up for us in monitoring and evaluation in our program. And it's something that we are putting a lot of effort towards at the moment, because we've got a few measures in place, but nothing that's concrete enough to get our actual statistics out there. So that's a lovely suggestion, which we're going to take into strong consideration. Thank you.
Okay, so there are actually lots of comments or questions and all of that. Someone was asking how he can partner with you, with your organization.
How they can partner with us. Pop us a mail and we'll see if we can find something that works.
I did put my email address in there, emily@underdogproject.org. So
Okay.
you're welcome to pop us an email.
We are a very small team and a very small organization, so we're always looking to grow and looking to branch out in ways. So we welcome partnerships.
Okay, so another question, someone says it's interesting because many programs have a myriad of outcomes, but you are specifically interested in empathy. So why not use a measure for pre/post for empathy?
Yeah, it's something that we definitely need to do. So empathy is one of our big key components that we are focused on, and there are several components that we focus on that are considered under our values. So it's empathy, it's connection, it's supporting youth in ways that they need support. So there's all kinds of things, and that's another fantastic suggestion that we will look into.
Fantastic. And another question.
Yeah.
So someone is asking, I was wondering about where you get funding for such a program.
Yeah, so funding for us, our managing director, Nina, works in fundraising. So that's one of her primary goals is to fundraise for us. And that's through every different avenue that you can imagine we are trying. So we've got private grants, we've got our own personal fundraising efforts. We've got, what else do we have?
We got donations, a big donation base.
Yeah.
We'd actually just finished our annual auction,
Yeah.
which brought in a nice sum.
So it's just all kinds of ways, but it's basically, if there's something that people are going to suggest to try for funding, it's on our radar.
And then grants and proposal writing, which is why these measurements and statistics and measurable outcomes is so important, so we can put it in our proposal.
So that was gently started with UCT last year. So it's something that we want to progress into.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So someone asked a question earlier and the person is trying to stress on that again. So maybe I don't know if you can just quickly give context to that and then we'll move on to the next speaker. So the person is asking for how to make a puppy less aggressive.
How to make a puppy less aggressive. There's a very detailed answer to that question, but there's so many ways to do that and to go about that, and it's something that I know consulting an animal behaviorist is your first thing to do, because it's a very tricky thing dealing with aggression, and there are many different ways that people would answer that question. So I'm happy to attempt an answer, but it's such a long-winded thing. So that person's welcome to pop us an email as well.
Also very dependent on where that aggression is coming from. So we obviously a lot of, if it's a history of abuse, obviously if it's a young puppy, then it maybe hasn't even experienced that yet, but dogs can get stress, their stress response can come from stress when they were in the mom's womb. So there's a wide range of how to cope with it, but identifying the cause is important.
Okay, thank you so very much. It's been enlightening and all of that, learning about your work and everything and all. And I especially love the story of the boy who couldn't talk to people, but he was able to talk to the dog and all of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will be moving to the next speaker, and I'll kind of just introduce him quickly. So he is a strong champion for healing of the planet. He's a dedicated conservationist and champion for animal welfare. He's been awarded an Environmental Conservation Award by the Ministry of Culture and Tourism in the Machakos County of Kenya. And he's a veterinarian. He's won a Veterinarian of the Year award by the Kenyan Veterinary Association. He's a veterinarian with a postgraduate degree in veterinary public health. He's undertaken numerous consultancy services in Kenya and other countries within Africa. He has equally taught a number of courses, animal health, for example, at Chuka University in Kenya, where he was chairman of the Department of Animal Science during his tenure. He served as past chairman of the Kenyan Veterinary Board. He's the president of the team of experts to establish and operationalize the African Union's Association of African Veterinary Statutory Bodies. He currently serves as the animal welfare expert an animal welfare expert with AU-IBAR. AU-IBAR stands for African Union Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources. He's equally served as the Africa Regional Expert Advisor to the World Animal Protection, one of the leading animal welfare organizations. So here to present on the topic, APAO's contribution by APAO. APAO stands for African Platform for Animal Welfare, an initiative of AU-IBAR. So here to present on APAO's contribution to the promotion of sustainable human-animal interactions, please make welcome Dr. Mwenda Mbaka.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Doc. And it's quite a pleasure for me to have been here this afternoon and listening to those fantastic presentations. It is quite heartwarming to see the initiatives to enhance animal welfare. Because like one of the speakers said, or some of the speakers have said or implied, animal welfare and human welfare go hand in hand. So if you allow, I will share my screen to show you the presentation that I need to make. My presentation is pretty short and brief, and I believe that that will be pleasant to most of you, having spent the whole afternoon in that much attention. You may want to have a break early to go and rest. So allow me to share my screen. Or would you like to do that from your side?
I think you can, since you're co-host, so you can. But if you have issues, just let me know and then I'll try to share.
Okay, let me do that. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me get into presentation mode. Yeah, so basically, this is going to, my task here is to articulate the Africa Platform Animal Welfare's contribution to the promotion of suitable human-animal interactions. I intend to cover a little bit on human-animal interactions and the impact, which are both can be either negative or positive on animals, or negative or positive on the performance of the functions of interest to humans. And then I'll mention to you about the animal welfare strategy for Africa, and that it is cognizant of sentience. And then I will give you an overview of the African Platform for Animal Welfare, and basically, eventually concluding on the relevance to the human-animal interactions. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware that humans and animals are in regular and at times close contact in modern intensive farming systems. The use of animals in entertainment and use of animals for companionship, the use of animals in therapy or research, the use of animals, companion animals, sorry, that is, I'm repeating that, and also in the world. The nature of the interactions by humans may have neutral, positive, or negative impacts on the animals. The quality of human-animal interactions can have a profound impact on the animal's welfare as well as the animal's productivity, including the ability to perform the work or the production of, perform the work or the work that they're kept for, or their ability to produce products such as milk, meat, and eggs, or any other use that the animals may be subjected to. The animal welfare strategy for Africa is founded on this basic fact, given that the outcomes of these interactions have a direct relationship on the outcomes aspired for in the animal resources sector. The animal welfare strategy for Africa is cognizant of sentience in animals, which is the basis of how animals respond to how they are treated. And that fact is quite well emphasized within the strategy, whereby considering some of the profound challenges that people experience in Africa as far as their livelihoods or their life generally is, it was deliberately decided that even as we champion for animal welfare in Africa, we use what we call Africa-centric narratives. These are the narratives that will enable people to recognize the fact that, yes, we are talking about animal welfare from the perspective whereby we are looking at the well-being of the animal. It is clear that if the well-being of the animal is going to be well taken care of in terms of the 5 freedoms, then obviously even the rights of those animals to live a good life is well covered. And as AU IBA, we have that approach because we are very conscious that a lot of people within Africa perceive that a push for animal welfare is actually a push for animal rights. And then you find that some people tend to take a step back and say, hey, we are here pushing for the rights of the animals to live a good life. And yet the capacities of the same people that we're talking to address the right of the African community to give a good life is not well catered for. So basically that is why from a realistic perspective, we deliberately ensured that the animal welfare strategy for Africa is pushing its agenda with the recognition of the fact that animals are sentient, to ensure that the well-being of the animals is taken care of, and we project the message of well-being very clear that the well-being of an animal includes everything that pertains to it to live the kind of life that will enable it to be the animal it was meant to be. Now, having said that, I would like to mention to you that the African Platform for Animal Welfare is a continental multi-stakeholder platform, which is led by the Africa Union Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources, and that it aims to support the implementation of the animal welfare strategy for Africa. The APAO, that is the African Platform for Animal Welfare, is comprised of the African General Assembly for Animal Welfare, the Coordination Committee for Animal Welfare in Africa, and the Secretariat to the APAO. Now, the African Platform for Animal Welfare has specific objectives, including promotion, including promoting the coordination, collaboration, and information sharing on animal welfare, and providing guidance to countries and stakeholders, and fostering a holistic and multi-stakeholder approach to animal welfare practices in Africa. The General Assembly of the APAO is chaired by the member state, which has the Africa Union presidency in the given period. And it meets at least once a year, and it acts as the decision-making body for the APAO. The Coordination Committee, which is chaired by the Africa Union Inter-Africa Bureau for Animal Resources, is responsible for monitoring and evaluating the implementation of the Animal Welfare Strategy for Africa Action Plan. The Africa Platform for Animal Welfare operates through various tasks, such as supporting Africa's common position on animal welfare in international processes and advocating for compliance with animal welfare standards by the African Union Commission member states. The platform mobilizes resources and engages stakeholders through membership that includes competent authorities, private sector organizations, non-governmental organizations, research institutes, intergovernmental organizations, and donors. A coordination committee supported by the AU IBA Secretariat, for which actually I am recruited to the AU IBA. My recruitment is to support the Secretariat of the APAO, which means it's to support AU IBA to deliver on its mandate through the APAO. Now, the coordination committee supported by the AU IBA Secretariat plays a vital role in implementing the Animal Welfare Strategy for Africa Action Plan, while ad hoc groups may be formed to address specific issues. I emphasize this because of your interests. The chair may invite experts to contribute to the platform's work as necessary. The APAO Secretariat is fulfilled by AU IBA. It supports the platform's activities in collaboration and in collaboration with other members where necessary. Now, to come closer home to why we are assembled here today, we recognize that human-animal interaction initiatives, including using them for therapy, can relate to the aspirations of the Africa Platform for Animal Welfare by promoting good animal welfare practices and considering the welfare of animals involved in those initiatives. The platform's objectives include a holistic and multi-stakeholder approach to ensure good animal welfare practices in different contexts and situations in Africa. And by fostering partnerships and collaboration, the Africa Platform for Animal Welfare can contribute to the promotion of human-animal interactions that prioritize the well-being of animals and adhere to animal welfare standards. The platform's role in supporting Africa's common position on animal welfare also provides an opportunity to advocate for the consideration of animal welfare in initiatives such as therapy. Because once that has been done through the AU IBA and through the platform, ultimately it ends up at the AUC, Africa Union Commission, at the point at which that's the platform at which now it becomes possible to develop legal frameworks that can enable the rest of the continent to adopt such innovations for implementation by the member states as something that the African Union Commission, or rather the African Union community, has agreed and found to be important to incorporate in the way it addresses, or rather it utilizes the animal resources sector. Now, AU IBA encourages stakeholders with the initiatives or interests that advance the animal welfare agenda in Africa to reach out to aid for dialogues about how to mainstream these initiatives or interests into the animal welfare agenda of the APAO. And I must say thank you to Dr. Sandy for the initiative of getting us invited into this forum, because this marks that journey of expressing to you that our doors are open for you to reach out to us, for us to hold dialogues as to how we can mainstream these initiatives that you are advancing. So this way, AU IBA plays its role of leveraging its convening advantage. That is, AU IBA brings together the African Union member states and other stakeholders within Africa for their stakeholders to apply collaborative approaches in the utilization of the technical and financial resources committed to the animal welfare agenda in Africa. without the risk of wasteful duplication of resources that are meant for those initiatives. And now, to finish the presentation to you, I would like to leave you with the contact of the AU IBAR in case you wish to follow this one through. And with that, I say thank you very much for giving me the audience to address you. Back to you, Dr. Sunday.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mbaka, for that brief presentation and for sharing the work of AU IBAR, specifically that of the APAO platform. So we would probably try to engage with AU IBAR as well to see how human-animal interactions is built into AU IBAR's APAO program or platform, and then see how that grows as well within the African continent, or how AU IBAR can help to grow these conversations within the African continent. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have come to we are approaching the end of the conference, and I would, so Dr. Mbaka, my mentor, Dr. Elizabeth Omro, she just made a comment. She said, thank you for such an encouraging presentation. And she says they are very happy to share resources from SCAS and IHIO with AU IBAR. SCAS stands for the Society for Companion Animal Studies, and IHIO stands for the International Association for Human-Animal Interactions Organizations. So we'll probably see how all of this can work together, how the synergy can be created between AU IBAR and SCAS as well as IHIO, to see how this can be built, hopefully, into the African context in a greater light. So we will at this point just share a brief, some brief information as well about our own work, and to see how, let me see, yes. Okay, so thank you all so much for being here, and we are at the end of the presentation. I would want to just quickly share my screen though, to share about us as an organization. Can you all see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we are Dog I Love Human Support Initiative, and the picture you're seeing on the slide right now was our first assessment trial in 2018 to a special needs center in Abuja, Nigeria here. This was, so for us, the story for us started from this young man in the picture that you see here. And everything we're doing, I would say, is in loving memory of him, Joshua Bonika. So Joshua was my nephew, and when he was born, there was no autism service in Nigeria. So we never were able to get a diagnosis for him to know what was wrong or anything. We just knew that he was nonverbal, even up to 4 or 5 years of age. And then there were things that were also seemingly not commensurate with what you would expect from his developmental milestones. And then we, as a family of which is quite regular with Nigeria, and I want to think much of Africa, from what I now know, I would say that Joshua was autistic, but then, like I said, he never was diagnosed, and unfortunately, he died in 2012. And then I came across the video of Nathan Selov that talked about his own diagnosis, which I want to believe is very similar to what Joshua's diagnosis may have been. I came across the video years later, and that was how we learned about human-animal interactions and everything, learning about how it could even help to build empathy, all of that. And that's how we got into the entire space. And so just to equally say, this is our story, and that's what got us to where we are. So the first slide was our first assessment trial, where we even said, okay, let's see if this is something that is of value to us in Nigeria, beyond being of value in the West. And we're so happy to see that on the continent of Africa, beyond our work. When we first came into the space in 2017, thereabouts, we didn't even know this was already in Africa. And then it was so heartwarming to see that there were organizations already across Africa, like we've seen Fonda Ninja and Underdog Project already today talk about their programs and all. Well, in this picture, now knowing what body language, dog body language is, we would say the dogs in this picture, especially CC here, CC, the white Lhasa Apso, was quite looking stressed. Yes, she was a good family dog at home, trained, socialized and all, but she got into this space and then was exhibiting probably some signs of stress, which we didn't know how to read at the time. But over time, we've now been able to learn to train, socialize our dogs to various contexts, to be able to get them to be comfortable, and then also to gauge, to know which dog works, which dog is happy to be in sessions, and then to bring those dogs in sessions and those that are not. Unfortunately, we don't have much updated pictures because the special needs centers that we do work with would more often than not prefer that we don't take pictures when we are there. And so it's most times is when they post pictures of the interactions we have at the center that we can have the opportunity to be able to have these pictures, access to the pictures, and then get the pictures out. So this is our these are our contacts. So please feel free to reach out to us on email, via LinkedIn, and through Facebook as well. And I would especially want to commend Praise, who anchored some part of the event today. Praise has been a volunteer with us as well, beyond her own project that she's been running. And she's done a superb work with keeping up the engagement online, especially. And also, please feel free to reach out to us on the above stated channels, and equally reach out to me if need be. For us, like I said earlier, we are glad to be serving as catalysts to see how human-animal interactions grows on the continent of Africa. And so we are helping to facilitate these conversations, and all with the hope that connections are made, growth is made, and then human-animal interactions grows on a large scale to be able to measurably make impact on the continent of Africa. So with this, I would say we have come to the end of the structured part of this event, and I would stop recording at this point.